How you doing, Paul?
Hello. How are you doing?
Oh, kind of in a rush tonight. Sometimes the afternoons don't go smoothly.
That happens.
Yeah. Dave and Ashley, welcome.
How are you, Mayor?
Very well.
Mayor, nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you again. Twice in one day. That's good.
Well, we get Mayor hell for breakfast and for dinner.
We do.
I wonder if I remembered to eat lunch since I didn't see you. Can't remember.
Well, my Mickey Mouse clock says it's 6 o'clock. One hand straight up, and the other hand down. Looks like it's raining in the sunshine out in my backyard. Okay, it looks like there's a majority of our council here. Maybe by the time I get through reading the electronic meeting notice, we'll have everybody here. I want to welcome everybody to our workshop this afternoon. We're going to discuss the legislative bills that came and went. Some were good, some one or two weren't, but this is an electronic meeting without a physical location pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-207 as amended by House Bill 5002. I, Mayor Robert Hale, as chair of the Midvale City Council, hereby make the determination that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based upon the fact that the city is unable to ensure compliance with the guidelines and public health protocols mandated by the state's current risk phase. As restrictions take place across the state for limiting public gatherings, the city wants to make sure everyone interested in participating in city council meetings can do so. This meeting will be broadcast on the YouTube link. If you would like to participate in public comments, please email your comments to Laura Magnus at lmagness@midvale.com prior to the completion of the public comments portion of the meeting. You may also submit comments if the mayor and city council open a specific agenda item to public comment. These comments will be read aloud in the meeting and will be part of the public record. So I want to again welcome Dave and Ashley Spatafor. They serve us well in the Capitol and virtually this year, right? So I'd like to turn a few minutes over to you to describe what's happened during the legislature, good and bad. We'll take it all.
Right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us. And we're glad to be here. We're even more glad that the session is over. What we'll do is we'll kind of just run through a couple of the bills that we followed for the city and the outcomes and what you can expect. And then we'll kind of leave it. Dave will end up discussing a couple of things that might happen during the interim. And then we'll open it up for questions if there are any. Like you said, it was a very peculiar session. Started out completely virtual. And then it kind of transitioned into a hybrid. By the second or third week, Dave and I ended up being up there most of the time. It was quiet, a little bit eerie, but things were still moving. A little bit more difficult this year. Not as many meetings, hard to kind of connect. There were a lot of it was hard to get a lot of information. So it was a much more difficult session. Glad it's over. As you kind of said, there were a lot of awful bills, and where we ended up was shockingly better than where we started. So we'll just run through a few. We'll start with HB, because two of the bigger ones we worked on very heavily with a lot of the other cities and with the League, Utah League of Cities and Towns. HB 82, Representative Ray Ward's single family home modification. So this was the ADU bill. Where it ended up is, yes, all cities have to allow ADUs, but there are a lot of different qualifiers. So you only have to allow it in about 75% of your primarily residential zones. And the bill also allows for a whole host of things that you can restrict. So you can require one off-street parking. You can mandate that you can't have separate utilities. It's internal. So this is only internal ADUs. This isn't the detached or new structures. It's only internally within the home. You can also require a permit. So, so a homeowner would have to permit for these. There's also a stipulation that this allows short-term rentals. So you can monitor for short-term rentals, and it can't be used for short-term rentals because this bill is being really targeted as an affordable housing crisis. How do we increase the supply? And it's by using the current stock. So that bill did end up passing, I believe. We ended up staying neutral on the bill, which most cities did, and that was the negotiated point. A lot of different cities worked on this. But I think the other thing I'll just add on there, it'd be really important for the city to really monitor how this changes or how it affects the city. We'll want to know what significant changes happen or do not happen to the city, because this might be something they might continue to work on. We need to know what it actually does. HB 98, Representative Paul Ray's local government building regulation. This was probably our absolute least favorite bill, and it was horrible. When it finished, it was less horrible. It started out originally allowing, basically it would have allowed home builders to completely bypass cities and inspectors, right? So you don't have to do the plan review. You could hire your own inspector, which caused a lot of heartburn for a lot of different industries. I see that Brad Larson is on here. We worked with the fire industry on this as well. So this was kind of an all hands on deck. Where it ended up is, and it only applies to 1 and 2 family homes. And so you have to do you have 14 days to do the plan review. And then you have 3 days for an inspector, right? So you have 3 days to the inspectors to go in and view. After that, the builder can hire an independent contractor. The part that really got left in there that is not ideal, but it was restricted to only single and 2 family homes, as there are certain restrictions on what you can require for external requirements. So materiality, different things with the size, the shapes of the windows, the interior layout. So those are new provisions that we can no longer enforce as a city. Again, terrible bill, ended up in a less terrible position. But you know, a couple others that I wanna call out. HB 347. So this is Representative Elison's homeless services amendments. Last year, you remember there was a slightly antagonistic bill regarding the homeless services and how to develop a statewide homeless services, better contain, or how do we manage our homeless services, which is a big deal for Midvale. This year, what happened after last year was the Kempsey Gardner Institute did a study and a report. And the bill that followed and passed largely reflects what that Kempsey Gardner report indicated. So there will be a new coordinator within the governor's office. There's still the homeless, and I'm going to get all the terms wrong, but there's still a homeless coordinating council or homeless council, which is not dissimilar to what currently has the statewide homeless coordinating committee. The mayor sits on that. All of the mayors of the cities that have shelters sit on that, as well as providers and a handful of other folks. The board got a lot bigger, this council got a lot bigger, but basically, you know, the coordinator is going to be the point person for homeless services. There's now going to be an individual in the state that is going to be responsible for homeless services, which I think is a good thing, right? Because when we have problems as a city, we have someone to go talk to, right? We have someone to say, here's where the buck stops. So I think that's a really good thing. And I think the other good thing is that that really maintains the integrity of the mayors being a part of the decision-making process. So all in all, you know, we'll be seeing that kind of transition and see how it kind of comes to fruition. The bill doesn't go into effect until July, you know, so the new coordinator won't come in until the new fiscal year. So I think there's going to be a lot of work. The one thing that was not in the bill, you know, our homeless mitigation account, it's exactly the same. Nothing has been changed with that. How much money or the dispersals or the amounts. It still goes through that same process, and the coordinator will oversee it, and then in coordination and cooperation with that council. But nothing changed as far as what the percentages were, how much money is in there. That is going to be our interim topic. We're working with all of our sister cities that have shelters. Couple of other bills. There was another terrible bill that this one did not pass. This was the fee amendments. Representative Waldrop's HB 401, which would have required all of our fees. So not only, I mean, it was changing the definition to a reasonable amount for all of our fees that we charge to, I believe, a rough estimated, which is not the problem. What would have been a problem was a complete new system of how we would have had to track all of these fees, how to report the fees, you know, another report to the auditor. Luckily, this did not pass. Jumping over, there were a couple billboard bills, caused a lot of heartburn for a lot of different cities. The big one that was pushing forward is what the goal was to provide better parity, or so that was kind of sold as, is better parity between on-premise signs and off-premise signs, which would have allowed automatic upgrade for electronic billboards. The really great thing is this bill did not pass. Neither of the bills did pass. It sounds like the billboard companies are now working with cities directly, which is a great thing to do and probably should have happened from the get-go, but both billboard bills did not pass. Another bill I want to bring up, and Matt Dahl, I see Matt Dahl's on here, and he was kind of part of all of the ups and downs of this bill. And this was SB 164, Senator Andrigg's Utah Housing Affordability Amendments. It was a product of the Commission on Housing Affordability, which really started out as not a good product from the Commission on Housing Affordability that was kind of dropped. You know, the commission met all during the summer working on some topics and some pieces. The bill dropped, I think, the first week of the session with a lot of really terrible things in it, including additional requirements for fees or limiting impact fees. There was inclusionary zoning within there, which I think some cities are interested in using, but what was originally in there basically said if a city ever employs or uses inclusionary zoning and requires a developer to do a certain amount of affordable units, the city has to pay for all or compensate the developer for all of those affordable units or the discount. That was removed. There was a so what actually ended up being in the bill got stripped down quite significantly. There is an ability for a city to grant land for affordable units, as long as those units are affordable and indeed restricted. And I think it ended up at 80% AMI or 50% AMI, I believe is where it ended up, and lower. There's a portion where the county is going to start to track housing stock, which I think is, not necessarily revolutionary as far as affordable housing goes, but it really starts to look at how much housing we do have, what the type of housing stock is. It's kind of like an incremental push for better data collection. The other thing that was in there, which I think is a very good, small, useful step, is expanded mediation services. So instead of, trying to avoid evictions and to find a resolution between landlords and tenants, that was in there. But I think the more interesting thing about the bill is what's going to happen in the interim. I think there was a really big push I think there were a handful of legislators that were frustrated by some of the developers or in some of these affordable housing concepts that were penalizing cities, right? Punishing cities for not having affordable housing. And I think there were really a lot of legislators that came up to Dave and I and a couple of others, and to Cam from the league, and basically said, what are options that we can look at to solve our housing affordability crisis without penalizing cities? So I think we're going to see that during the interim. I think there's the commission is asked to work more closely with political subdivisions. So we'll see how that goes. But I think there's going to be some really great movement on that, inclusionary zoning, handful of other tools. So more to come on that. Matt, I'm sure you're excited because your additional duties of the commission will continue.
I do want to just add, though, that Dave and Ashley also head up a housing committee that really generally operates as the brain for the commission. And while we debate a lot of the things that come up, the best ideas come from their group. And they really do affordable housing and the communities that they represent a service by being on that group and putting those, coming up with those ideas, helping foster that. And the good things in this bill generally come from them, just like the previous bills have as well. So thank you guys for what you do.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. And I think we're going to continue that this year. I think there's going to be more of that, because I think the more cities are involved in talking about affordable housing, the better the solutions that come out of the better products there are, right? Not included in that bill, but was a very nice surprise appropriation, was a lot of affordable housing money. So there's going to be, I'm going to get it wrong, I think $10 million for gap financing for affordable housing that goes through Olene Walker. I think $25 million is going to go to the new preservation organization, which includes IHC, Gail Miller, Zions, and Ivory Homes, which basically tries to save affordable properties before they are either foreclosed on or become no longer affordable. So there's $25 million that's going to be paired with a lot of private philanthropic dollars. And there's going to be a lot of money put into homelessness. So I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting things happen. I think the other thing too is all the federal dollars, right? What are the federal dollars? What are the creative ways that we can solve some affordable housing issues statewide? Just a couple more that I'll touch on. SB 221, Senator Andrick's short-term rentals amendments, which came out very end of the session and would have actually contradicted a provision of the hard-fought negotiations on HB 82, which would have allowed ADUs, homeowners to rent out their basements or their ADUs for short-term rentals. That bill did not pass, so that was good. One of the last bills, and I want to say I think we killed this bill because of the threats of what Dave was going to do. It probably not, but SB 241, Senator Dan McKay, sales tax distribution amendments. So this would have, right now we're at a 50-50 point of sale population distribution for all of our local option sales tax. This would have, in 30 years, over a 30-year transition process, did it to 100% population, which would really hurt non-bedroom communities, including Midvale. I'm sure I haven't seen the numbers, but it would have probably been devastating. So what we did is we used Dave as a threatening tool, and Dave was going to filibuster for 45 minutes and tell the entire committee the history of sales tax distribution starting from 1982. It worked. I mean, I don't know if that was the case, but it worked. And the bill actually did not even get a hearing. So I would like to say we were very successful.
Ashley is not joking. You know, since I'm the oldest person in the room, Mayor and Kane, you know, I was active in 1982 when Governor Matheson vetoed the local option sales tax redistribution, and in '83 when we worked out the compromise. I can tell everybody and share with them all of the secrets and where all the bodies are buried, even before the Capitol was remodeled in the early 2000s with the history of the local option sales tax. I would have put the entire Senate committee to sleep in 10 minutes, and they'd still be there in the Senate office building. Ashley did a great job on the bills. I'm going to talk about
So, you know,
a couple of things.
Before you jump in, are there any questions? And Dave will kind of go into interims, but are there any questions or bills that I didn't cover?
One thing that I would add, Ashley, is I listened to that debate on the bill that McKay was going to bring out and didn't. But it's not dead. They're going to bring it back.
Yeah.
Phil Moore supported it. But, you know, I think the message that needs to go back up to on the Hill is, if you do something like that, why would a city ever want a retail center in their city? We'll be zoning out retail centers and trying to build to get more population in the city so that we can get more sales tax that way. So I'm not understanding what they don't see about the fairness of how we divide up sales tax amongst the city.
You know, you're right, Kane. Why would Midvale have done the entire development west of your city hall on Bingham Junction? You wouldn't do that. There would be a race against jobs and a race for housing, and that's very appropriate. I want to talk about one bill before we go into the interim, and that's House Bill 244. Midvale is going to get $500,000 a year for 15 years on the quarter transportation funds. So, you know, that's $7.5 million over the next 15 years. If we have big projects, you know, we can bond if we trust that distribution. If not, we know that's coming on an annual basis. One of the things I just wanted to focus on before I get into interims is
Dave, I would like I would like to applaud your work on that, your and Ashley's work. This is the money that comes directly to Salt Lake County, quarter sales tax that's supposed to be used for regionally significant roads. And in the past, they've divided that up at the state legislature level, and certain lobbyists and legislators got together and decided which cities got what. Now that money is going to be shared and equally distributed amongst the cities of Salt Lake County, which is going to make it so much easier in the future. So we're not all fighting against each other for those dollars. So thanks, Dave, for your work on that bill.
The fifth sub passed. In substitute one, Midvale didn't have any money. And then I think in substitute 4, Midvale had $400,000 a year. And the bill that passed, Midvale went from $400,000 a year to $500,000 a year. So that was a nice big jump on that last substitute.
It's still, I hate the bill. I hate the process. It's still a terrible process. It's not fair and equitable, and you still got to fight for it. Dave and I still have bruises. It's fine, but it did end up where it started and where it could have gone. It's the most equitable solution that could have been determined.
And if you like closed rooms, cloak and dagger, smoke and mirrors, and a Ouija board, that's how the transportation monies are divided. From 2011 to 2020, during that 10-year period, there were, I think I'm going to say 12 bills that were passed dealing with police reform. In the 2021 session, 22 bills were passed on police reform. Everything from a lot of training, oversight, use of force on individuals threatening to harm themselves. And we're not done yet. I would imagine that during this next interim, there's going to be more work on police reform. So Ashley did a great job of going through all the bills, and Mayor Hale and council members, let me just tell you that that Kane and Matt, Chief Thomas, Brad Larson were very, very active on a lot of the issues that we needed help with, and they did a great job of providing the information to us. And that's another reason why we enjoy working so much with Midvale.
Well,
But during the interim,
that and applaud you all.
yes, please do. During the interim, Ashley talked about there'll be more work on affordable housing, both the commission and in political subdivisions, interim committee. There'll be more work on billboards. Right now, you know, the big news is Salt Lake City and Reagan are actually in the same car looking at billboards, which is something that I'd never thought I would see before I joined the hereafter. And so if that can continue, maybe we can not have to worry about billboard legislation, but we'll always worry about it. In the first year of the new homeless structure, there'll be more changes. You know, Mayor Hell will be on the one committee. We'll follow that very closely, but there'll be a lot more issues there. The funding, when we had our breakfast back in December, it was January this year. And by the way, when COVID's gone, you guys still owe us breakfast. But when we had the breakfast, we followed up with Representative Ellison about trying to increase the pot on the homeless mitigation fund. And we figured out that we wanted to go somewhere from 1.8% to 2.2%. Now, on the other hand, if all the money were distributed upon a population basis, we'd have $10 million in that fund, and our 20% would be over 2 million. So we would, you know, that's one way where we would win. But anyway, Cam called and asked if we would not touch that during the session. And so we asked Representative Ellison not to do it. And that's why we'll be spending some time during this interim looking at how we can better get more money into that mitigation fund, and how we can better distribute it. And I think what we need to do, and we'll get with Patrick to make sure that we know whether we want 1.2 or 1.3 or whatever we need, so we can make sure that we have it. I know the bill's at 1.7. I don't know if we can get to 1.7, but we can certainly try. Sales tax distribution will be a big issue. And Matt and Kane, you talked about, we've got to take a look about who would want commercial centers. The bottom line is this: back in 1983, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details, one of the oversight that we never did 38 years ago was to look at what happens after the redistribution. Because the more money goes to bedroom communities and is taken away from commercial centers. An analysis wasn't done about what happened to the taxing side of that equation. Because quite frankly, some bedroom communities eliminated their property tax, and commercial centers had to increase theirs. And the bedroom communities don't provide all the services commercial centers do. We need to take a look at that aspect of municipal financing, because that's a critical aspect. On police reform issues, we will see a lot more work on forcible entry, on use of force issues, and on release of body-worn camera footage. Those are three of the issues that I know we'll see some more work on, and there may be others. We do know that Commissioner Anderson is still planning on having his monthly community meeting with law enforcement and community leaders. We know that's going to happen. During the session, Ashley and I were part of Commissioner Anderson's weekly law enforcement meetings. So we had a handle on everything, and the coordination among police and sheriffs and Department of Public Safety. Mayor Hale, council members, Kane, Matt, staff, that's our report. I'll close by just, if there are any questions, we'll answer them. But once again, it's been a pleasure working with each of you, and we think we did some good stuff. And at least kept some of the bad stuff from being as bad as it could have been.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Dave and Ashley. It was a great session that was kept under control somehow. And we owe a lot to both of you, and Matt and Kane and anybody else that got involved in legislature, Brad Larson, and anybody. That was great.
You know, Mayor, as you know, this morning when we met with the UFA Board of Directors, you know, Brad contributed mightily on 82 and 98 to give us the fire life safety issues.
Yep.
And so from Brad from UFA and the entire senior staff at UFA, almost every one of the fire related issues, which we won't go through tonight, their senior staff were very active in making sure that we had all the information that we needed. So that was a good relationship and a good partnership as well.
Certainly is. We appreciate all of you working in a coordinated fashion and watching out after Midvale City interests and UFA, UPD, and everybody else that we're tied up with. Thank you. Okay.
Mayor, if I could just comment, I just want to tell Dave and Ashley how much I've enjoyed working with them. I hired Dave when I took over as city manager in 2006, and he's been our lobbyist since. And the reason that I chose Dave was recommended by my former boss, Lake King. But what he said is Dave can work both sides of the aisle, and I've watched him do that. And he works so well with both Republicans and Democrats on the Hill. And then with the addition of Ashley, these last few years has been just outstanding. She keeps Dave straight and in line. And so that helps a lot. But I've really enjoyed my time. I've spent a lot of hours up there on the Hill with them. And I can tell you that they always have our best interest in mind, and they've done a great job for us. I can't, if I put a pencil to the amount of funding that we've been able to get through their help, it's a big number that Midvale's benefited from. So thank you both for the work you've done, and I've really enjoyed it.
Kane, it's been a pleasure. You know, I think we've had 15 or 16 years together and a few years before that. And I'm going to try to get back from St. George and the police conference next Thursday. You know, this isn't your going away party tonight. That's next Thursday. You know, but if I don't happen to get back in time, it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. And you and Virginia deserve the absolute best in retirement. I wish you many, many more years, you know, of family and Yankee baseball. And I'm glad in your last year at work, you finally got a decent BYU football season, even though, and especially because you didn't have to play Utah.
Thanks for that backhanded compliment. And I'm sure that Councilmember Brown is appreciating that Yankee comment.
Well,
LeBron James just reportedly bought a portion of the Red Sox. So I am looking for a new baseball team at the moment. But, I'm not sure where I stand with the Yankees.
LeBron's a Yankee fan, so there may be some pinstripes in Fenway now.
Yeah, I don't like that.
And Brian, in case you haven't heard, just as a segue, the University of Utah is looking for a new basketball coach.
Yeah, I heard that just minutes before our meeting started. We'll see where that goes. I don't have a lot of hope.
And those of you who worked with Maddie, Maddie was the third member of our team this year, Maddie Wolf Carlson. This was between graduating from Utah State and going to law school in the fall. Maddie's husband is the starting center for the University of Utah basketball team. So we had good connections there, and we had good conversations after a win, and we lamented losses.
Yep. Yep.
Thanks again for everybody.
Thank you.
Done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to everybody. Okay, Jordan Swain, UTA, would you join in now and give us an update on what's happening?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the council for allowing us to be here. We're very excited. Is it okay if I share a screen? I've prepared some slides to
You betcha.
assist here. But what we'd like to talk about today is the areas surrounding. Oh, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. There we go. The areas surrounding the 2 track stations that exist in your fine city, at the Fort Union Station and Center Street Station. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the market around those areas, and so as of late, UTA has gone through. Let me start from the beginning of this presentation. UTA has gone through and looked at 2 station area plans that had been completed a couple years ago, and are wanting to revisit those plans to amend them and to, I guess, modernize them in a sense. But before we get into the specifics of the Midvale station area plans, I thought that I would just kind of go over what a station area plan is from UTA's perspective, why they're valuable, why they're productive, and so forth, so that we can all be on the same page. But yeah, so in this presentation, we just wanted to cover the UTA vision and policy that includes station area planning. There's a very fine example in Clearfield of how a station area plan was completed and the fruits of that station area plan that are now coming to fruition. We can talk about what a station area plan is in general, and then we can get into the specifics of the Midvale plans. And actually, before I get too far into this, how much time do I have here, approximately?
We are at 6:34. Kyle, how much time do you need?
Probably about 10 to 15 minutes. I can move my presentation to a later time if we need to.
Okay, so somewhere around 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that I get to the most important things and give those enough attention. But just very succinctly, UTA, in our policy, we have this general vision of moving from a regional scale and planning at a regional scale down to a station area, which is approximately a quarter mile around a station. And then within that, if UTA owns property within that station area, we go on to work with a development partner to do master planning and site planning and so forth. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to work to improve the equity within the region, the social equity within the region. We just heard a lot about affordable housing and so forth. It allows us to really maximize things like affordable housing within station areas and so forth, as well as respecting the city's jurisdiction as the land use authority, right? UTA certainly respects and appreciates individual cities and their love for the population within their cities and so forth. And so by doing station area planning, we heavily rely on cities and their knowledge and understanding of their communities and population and so forth. So station area planning lies within this larger process that starts from a regional scale and ends at a very fine-grained master plan or site plan scale. And an example of this that we just completed actually earlier this year is Clearfield. Well, the station area plan was completed about 2 years ago, and this is an illustrative map from that plan. This is just kind of the general layout of things. You can see that we started out with a 56-acre parcel of nothing, right? It was just brownfield. And we worked with a local consultant. Well, they're actually international, but they have a local office, IBI, to come up with this vision. And this is what it looks like. And after we arrived at this vision with the consultant, and I should add that the process to come up with this included quite a bit of community engagement and existing conditions analysis, which is a very exhaustive and objective analysis of the area to come up with this vision. So it's based on a lot of analysis and assessment, and so with this general vision, UTA moved to release an RFP, a request for proposal, to find a development partner who might help UTA realize the vision, right? To actually construct it, develop it. And this is what the results of that RFP looked like, right? This is what the developer came back to UTA with, was this plan that is, it resembles the stationary plan quite a lot, but you can tell that there is some deviation. You can tell a developer has looked at it and they've seen what would be optimal for the market and so forth. And so they made their proposal. We selected this particular developer's proposal. And then thereafter, we began to work with the city and the developer to come up with what is now the master development plan, which was adopted about 2 months ago. And so this is the final product that started with the stationary plan, but that became an entitling document, right? It's a regulating document that can now be phased out parcel by parcel and developed as the market permits. But anyway, that's just a brief example of how a stationary plan can benefit a city, is by bringing stakeholders together to create a vision, allowing a developer to grow an appetite for that vision, and then for the developer and the city to collaboratively come up with something that works for all the stakeholders and can be developed and constructed and so forth. So now switching gears over to Midvale, I just wanted to go through the land use concepts and the transportation concepts of a plan that was completed in 2019, and then possibly discuss some amendment possibilities, right? If we're going to go in and amend those stationary plans, what is it that the city council really wants to see in those amendments? Because as I said, UTA, we respect cities as the land use authority, right? And I think that's very important. So UTA would really like to understand from Midvale what you would like to see within these station areas so we can plan accordingly. But anyway, so just a brief overview. I already said it was complete. These stationary plans were completed in 2019. They were funded by the TLC program, also known as the Transportation Land Use Connection Program. It's a funding source provided by WFRC to plan these types of things. The plan was very collaborative. It involved a number of representatives from Midvale City, from Wasatch Front Regional Council, from UTA, and also it had many community engagement events, so the community itself was involved. And it was completed by GSBS, which is a local architectural firm. And there were two stations included in the study: the Fort Union Station and the Center Street Station. And these are just these are the renderings that came out of that study that are really just massing models that show some additional connections and so forth. But anyway, so it was a very productive planning process. But as we'll see, I'm not sure that it's really sufficient to guide Midvale and UTA in the development of properties around the stations. So first, starting off with the Fort Union Station, this is just the land use concept. It shows some relatively high density development along 7200 South in the form of office and mixed use commercial. Oh, and also hospitality. That was an interesting kind of twist during the process, is really programming a lot of hospitality in there. And then as we transition into or towards the single family neighborhood, the density lowers into townhomes and so forth. Pretty basic recommendation from the consultant. There were a few connections recommended by the consultant. The most notable being this the central this blue line right here, which is the kind of like a multimodal boulevard or promenade through the site that offers an enhanced connection to the platform.
Hey, real quick, while you're on this, talking about that connection, there was just a brand new apartment building built, right? So, I mean, I guess you could try to make that connection the very north end, but it'd be really close to 7200 South. So I don't know if the plans generally, because where that medium density residential is, you know, this new Moda
This right here.
Albatross. Yeah. And so like, I don't know if there needs to be some amendments because there's brand new buildings being built.
Is that
don't really
Davis
fit with
Capital's development right there?
Yes.
Matt, it is. Okay. Or Alex. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to build a road.
perfect
You'll ever
example.
build a road there now.
I'm so glad you brought that up because development is happening so quickly that these plans are quickly becoming, or as quickly becoming obsolete, right? As things spring up, then you know, we have to adapt to what's actually in the ground now. So I'm glad you brought that up. That those are exactly the types of things we would like to.
And what's unfortunate is that was something people wanted. They really thought that connection with some ground level, you know, retail or restaurants or whatever could have come through. Yeah, I sat through all these meetings and there was some sour taste because everyone felt pretty good about it. And then that Moda went in and kind of killed that connection that you're speaking of. So there might have to be a redo, at least for something like this.
Yeah, that is a shame. I mean, I'm sure once we open these plans back up and we, you know, we start envisioning what the community once again, we'll come up with an equally exciting solution. But yeah, it is unfortunate when something goes in that contradicts the plan and makes it impossible to realize.
I think there might have been a little bit of confusion though, but just for some clarity, while these plans were completed, it did not end up getting adopted by the city council.
That's correct. Yeah, these are kind of vision documents, but they're not regulatory at this point. Yeah, I mean they're viewed as UTA as UTA did adopt them as station area plans. So we are capable of moving forward with the development of our property by statute. But yeah, it's not adopted as a regulatory document by the city of Midvale. That's right. But we would like to, I mean, in revisiting these, in amending these, we would like to reach, you know, a product that Midvale does feel comfortable adopting as regulatory documents that can guide development in the future. And now going down to Center Street, similar land use recommendations, right? You know, toward or along State Street, we see really high densities being recommended. And then as we move west towards the single family neighborhood, densities decrease to provide some transition. However, in going back through the plans, it's kind of constraining the way the plan boundary was set up because it was really set up directly on the periphery of that single family neighborhood, right? So although there's some recommendation transition, it happens within like a 3-acre area, right? Which is very difficult to do. So anyway, and then there are some additional connections recommended by the consultant. The most notable here also being in blue, which is a new street that offers 2 new connections and pedestrian crossings along State Street, which would be very useful for future development. But anyway, so you can see that the recommendations that were made or that came out of these plans were fairly general, and I'm not sure they're as useful as we would like them to be. And I'm not sure they really equip Midvale with the necessary tools to begin amending things like parking ratios, affordable housing requirements, et cetera. So what we would like to do, UTA, and I would be willing to say that WFRC is probably willing to agree, is we'd like to approach another consultant to amend these plans with an adjusted plan boundary. We'd like to assess, I think something that would be very useful is to examine how we can transition from these really high density areas immediately adjacent to the stations into lower density areas and single family neighborhoods and so forth, because that seems like a large concern on the part of Midvale, is that we don't want to disrupt these single family neighborhoods that are working quite well right now. We certainly don't want to introduce additional congestion or crime or anything like that. So we want to really examine how that could work. We need to update the market analysis. One thing that we really need to look at is parking demand and what that looks like into the future. I know right now the amount of parking required by many cities, including Midvale, is somewhat. I mean, it's cumbersome to actually make a development pencil with that amount of parking. So we want to look at that. We want to, and in place of parking, we want to look at things like transportation demand strategies to get people to and from the platform without an automobile, or at least incentivize that. And then one thing that's lacking here, but needs to be in these stationary plans is an implementation strategy, right? We need to know exactly the precise steps to take in order to realize the vision that all the stakeholders have agreed upon. So just a kind of a cursory look at this. These are some, I think these are areas that probably deserve further analysis in this next iteration of stationary planning. I already mentioned the low density transition, and then these opportunity properties along State Street. We certainly need to update the market analysis for those properties. There's been quite a lot of interest in properties here at the corner of State Street. UTA has a particular interest in understanding how it could possibly move forward with the development of its own properties. This southern park and ride right here is virtually unused, and UTA is very interested in knowing or understanding how it could perhaps partner with a developer to get some affordable housing or some other kind of land use located there. And then for the Fort Union Station, same types of areas. We want to look at a transition zone, really understand how the transit areas can function optimally, and then look at some additional opportunity areas, particularly north. I think at Fort Union, north of 7200 South, it's a very interesting area that would probably yield a lot of opportunities. And then there are these interesting hotels that could probably be redeveloped into something more productive in the long term. So things like that we would really be interested in doing. But I'm here to more to hear the voice of Midvale, right? The City Council of Midvale, and what you envision for these areas. What is it that you want within the station areas?
Okay, if you have some ideas that you'd like to pass on to Jordan, we got some time.
I'd personally like to see all of those hotels closed down and something much more productive for the community put up in their stead. Right. And I think, all these opportunity areas that you've outlined indicate, the dire need for that to happen, because I don't think there will be much opportunity as long as those businesses are allowed to function there.
Right. Okay. Definitely note that.
And this is Councilman Member Brown. I hear what you're saying about parking, but as someone that lives in these cities and lives close, I live right behind on the other map. I'm one of the homes in the cul-de-sac right behind. I'm in one of in that yellow, that low density transition, and seeing what parking does even for the townhomes. Although maybe it's unfortunate it doesn't pencil for the developer, that's not really our job to make it work for them, right?
That's true.
And
yeah.
if there's parking issues, they have to spend more money and dig deeper and put in parking structures or whatever. It's not how can the city make these people the most money possible, but that's not it. And you're going to find most elected officials are probably going to stand by their parking requirements, because that's the easiest thing for the constituents to come after the elected officials about, is there's not enough parking.
Sure.
So I think the conversation, instead of I'm not saying you're doing this, but generally kind of this bully attitude of, hey, it's not working because of parking. What really needs to happen is these developers need to learn to make it work. Right. And they have to be creative with it, because at the end of the day, I went to law school at the U and took tracks 5 days a week. We still own 2 cars while I live there, right? So it doesn't change that I have to park a car. Maybe it takes the car off the road, but you still need to park your car. And it's almost worse because of parking, right? I haven't left. There's no time period for my car to leave the area so someone else could park. It could sit there for 5 days. So it's a bigger challenge than just, hey, does this pencil and how do we get people to use transit? It's like we should look at real life application to this, if that makes sense.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I briefly went into transportation demand strategies, but that's something that we'd like to explore much further so that we can understand that if there is some demand for people to live here without a car, then I think that the ratios required by a city ought to reflect that, right? I mean, certainly our demographics are quickly changing, and we're sitting here in a city council meeting virtually. It's kind of remarkable, but times are certainly changing, and we just want to make sure that the future growth within these station areas reflects the trends and the attitudes of those that might want to live here.
Well, thank you, Jordan.
The other thing is the discouraging part about these plans is like we've done these plans, but we really didn't move forward. So the reality is it really didn't accomplish anything, like the one on there on 7200, the Fort Union one. It's like a builder comes in and they build these new apartments, and there was no vision or no requirement for them to meet what the plan was, is to have a walkway through there. So unless we can move forward and put this in so that it actually happens, it's just wasting our time.
Another great comment. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Unless these become regulatory documents, they really don't do anything, right? I mean, a developer who stands to make millions isn't going to say like, oh, it'd be nice to have a walkway just because people want it. They need some kind of incentive or requirement to do so. So the second time around, in this next iteration, we'd really like to, like I said, produce something that Midvale can stand by and feel comfortable adopting as a regulatory document.
Is it possible, Jordan, and maybe Mayor and Matt, could we have this discussion in more detail coming up at a later council meeting? Because I feel as if there was a lot of information in here, for us to digest, and not as much time for us to actually have head-to-head on this and come up with some stuff.
I agree with you, and I'd be happy to find a place on that for this on a future agenda.
Great, yeah, and perhaps it could even be during the planning process. I mean, we would love to be as inclusive as possible during the next iteration of planning. If the city council would be willing, we would love to, come back, during the actual planning process to get your feedback for new concepts or future concepts, things like that. Yeah, we want to make this work for everybody.
I think what I'm hearing Councilman Gettle say, and maybe from others too, is that before a planning process starts, it's probably some value in us providing, I don't know, initial guidance as well as participating during that process.
Great.
And so that's what we would hope to achieve in a follow-up meeting. If I'm wrong with that, please let me know.
And I guess.
Sorry.
I guess the one question I have too is, how's this going to get paid for, this planning process?
So initially our thoughts, I mean, an amendment to the plan would be much less expensive than a new plan. So we're thinking it would probably run in the range of $50,000 to $60,000. UTA is certainly willing to participate in the cost of that. WFRC is a wonderful funding source for these types of projects. And then of course, we would hope that Midvale City was a participant in some capacity.
And we could use some of our transportation fund money that we have for projects like this as well, correct, Matt? The county, that county money we get.
Yeah, we will. There's a lot of different ways that we could fund it. I think the first thing though is trying to see if we can get any of those other organizations to provide us with a grant for it. But
Sure,
yes,
yeah.
we could look at some of those other sources as well.
And if
If
I
that's
could
enough
just
for you
quickly
guys.
respond to the possibility of an additional meeting, would it help if I actually brought forth a proposal for like specific things that would be planned, almost like a scope, and we could run through a preliminary scope and kind of assess what's useful and what's not?
Let's it would maybe make sense for us to get together and talk through that a little bit more, and we can communicate with the council on what we can provide and if that would be useful in advance of that meeting.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for allowing UTA to be here. We really appreciate your comments and feedback. And as I said, we want these station areas to work for everybody. So just let us know what we can do, and we would love to collaborate.
We're grateful for UTA's collaboration also, and being a willing partner in the development of the land around the track stops and the front runner stops, which we don't have one, but track stops are important to us. We actually have 3 of them in our city, and so we love to have collaboration with our UTA transportation partners. So thanks, Jordan, for spending some time with us, and we will plan future opportunities soon to get together with you and other staff from UTA and our Midvale City staff and get some things outlined as to where we're going with this.
Great. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, Kyle, now what do we do?
Do you want me just to move my report? I have a department report tonight, and I can do my budget presentation instead. I always have good information to present, but nothing that can't wait to be presented to the council.
All right, then if you wouldn't mind, let's put you in your report later in the meeting, and we'll take care of it there. Is that okay?
Great, sounds good.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay, well, it's 7 o'clock right on the nose, so I'm going to welcome everybody to the Midvale City Council meeting on this 16th day of March 2021. And I'm with you. I hope this is the last maybe half dozen that we have to sit at home to transact the city's business. It's hard to say for sure. Hope springs eternal, and hopefully we can move forward. I want to remind anybody tuning in now that this is an electronic meeting. There is no physical location where we are meeting, but you can join in the broadcast of this meeting on Midvale's YouTube channel. And if you have any comments that you would like to make during the public comment section or during the regular agenda, if the mayor and city council open the meeting to specific public comments on an item, then you are to send those your comments to Laura Magnus at LMAGNESS@midvale.com, and we will have those comments read into the public record. So let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask Police Chief Thomas to wave his flag, and we'll stand and pledge our allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, Rory Anderson, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Robinson.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Sperry. Sperry.
I'm here.
Ken Glover.
Here.
Thank you.
I think we got somebody else in here. I heard a bark there. Okay, we'll now have our unified police report by Chief Thomas, followed by our fire department. There you are, Brad Larson. So if you'd present your reports, please.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. It's good to see you all. I hope you got the February stats pushed out to you. I'll just highlight some of the stats. We had a low case count of 715, which is really good, but it's a predictable trend that we're seeing now over the last 3 years. It's good to see. Our citation count was 688, with 461 of those being penalty citations. I want to recognize our crew for doing their best along the corridor. We've had a significant rise in criminal activity amongst our hospitality areas, as UTA would say, but I think they mean our hotel motels. But we're staying on top of it. We do have a significant amount of rooms that are closed, even in some of the hotels that we don't typically see. And we're more or less stumbling across these as we do lesser crime criminal investigations. They're leading back to narcotics, fraud, forgery, stolen vehicles, etc. So we're staying as active as we can on that. And right now it seems to have a little bit of a trend up. So I wouldn't be surprised to see our case count go up a little bit in the current month. Our hotel motel stats that we track, we had 76 cases between our hotels and motels last month. And that's a pretty predictable trend with the pace we're going at. I'd just like to thank the mayor for all his time he's been putting on their budget and finance committee and our employee compensation committee meetings for UPD. I won't step on the mayor's toes, but this upcoming Thursday will be the sheriff's UPD tentative budget that will be forwarded to the UPD board to take a look at. And I believe he and Kane have seen the preliminary on that. So it looks really good this year. In that, it includes some market adjustments to get our line officers. Probably the most significant market adjustment was our sergeant or supervisory level. And it's just over 4% in market, and it gets them, they're significantly out. So they did a surgical approach rather than going just perhaps a 2 to 3% across the board. They really looked at each rank and where it came. That being said, it's more or less a moving target because every other police department, we can theorize that they're not giving raises, but we're not seeing that. So we're trying to hit that moving target. It's really not a one-time fix. It's a 3-year plan, but it looks very promising. So I'll let the mayor expand on that when it's his turn, and I can add if there's any questions with what I do know, but like I said, that will be presented. I apologize to any of the city staff, and I don't know if any of the council felt the odd requests over the last week, but unbeknownst to me, as they went through our lieutenant's testing process, the very last portion of it, they asked the 12 candidates to put together a operational plan for civil unrest in the city of Midvale, and they made up a pretty large scenario. And so I started having sergeants calling me and asking me really odd requests. And ironically, the first one was a request that I forwarded to Matt Dahl regarding COVID declaration. And I really didn't put 2 and 2 together till about the third request within 2 hours after that. And to my understanding, our Laura Magnus was contacted, Glenn was contacted, and what it was these candidates were all reaching deep and finding resources to put together, in essence, a very functional operational plan. And I am proud to say that they did put the list out. Now it has a 30-day period, so it can be scrutinized. But number one on the lieutenant's list was our own Sergeant Nate Lord, who just received 2 weeks ago at our bid Officer of the Year for the Midvale precinct. So I'd like to recognize, he is the officer I've commended several times, that he and his crew ironically have been on just about every major incident that we've had in the city during the graveyard shift in the last year. And his outstanding leadership and mentorship was recognized, and ironically, it translated very well into the lieutenant's testing. So good, bad, or indifferent, he will likely be picked up as a lieutenant when promotions do afford themselves. Last but not least, I will be leaving town this early Thursday morning. I'll be back late Sunday night. I will be available by phone and glad to take phone calls or texts at any time, but I'll leave Lieutenant Ken Malone in command of the precinct while I'm gone. That's all I have for my report.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we'll turn the time now to Brad Larson.
I'll turn it over to UFA.
Brad Larson. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, council members. It's good to be with you. I appreciate this opportunity to present a brief report. First off, just quickly on the new Station 125, I just want you to know that the entire process with your city staff has just been tremendous. Chief Burchett's been very complimentary, Matt, of you and your staff and helping us through the process and knowing what we need to do and helping us get there. So thank you very much through the entire planning, zoning, and process that we've gone through. So I just wanted to say thanks real quickly on that. Looking forward to that station starting construction. One other quick note, I just wanted to report that about 80% of our staff have received their vaccinations for COVID. I believe we're pretty close to both vaccinations for the full 80% for both shots. And the last confirmed positive COVID that we had was clear back in January. So we're having some good results and feel really confident about the future. Mayor, if I might just share briefly what I shared this morning in board meeting about our apartment fire prevention program, if that's okay. I think that's important. It will affect, hopefully in a very positive way, many of your citizens that live in apartment buildings. We started a prevention program for apartment buildings just before the first of the year. It's part of our high hazard inspection program. Buildings or facilities, occupancies that we consider high hazard are those that present a high life risk or a high fire risk, something that could be very environmentally catastrophic to the community, assembly buildings and others that present a high life risk, the institutional nursing homes, daycares, and those kind of things. And we looked at national and state statistics. And we also ran some data on fire calls that we receive in our UFA fire district. And other than single family homes, we respond to more fire calls in apartment buildings and complexes than any other building. So we felt that it was important to add them to this high hazard program. What this means is that your inspectors have started visiting with apartment managers and the building owners and talking to them about fire safety issues. They did an assessment of properties. They looked at fire department access to make sure that we had good access. They did visual inspections of the fire hydrants. We talked to them about maintenance of their sprinkler and alarm systems if they have them, smoke detectors in the units, barbecues on the balconies, their responsibility to have the fire hydrants tested. This has been a very important first step in a proactive approach that we're taking to try and reduce the amount of fire calls that we receive in apartment buildings every year. 2020, for example, we responded to 25 fire calls. That's about 10 more than we normally do. Part of the reason I think is, and I haven't dug into all of the reports yet to get some very specific details, but part of it is people were home more, they were cooking more. That's kind of a national trend. The other reason, the other thing, excuse me, that I want to point out is that the dollar loss was, even though the fire calls were higher, the dollar loss was less than other years. And part of that reason is your fire crews are getting there very quickly and getting on top of it. So that's an important thing to look at too. The feedback that we've gotten from the managers and building owners has been very positive. We're also working with information outreach, developing a pamphlet to give to the managers and building owners that'll give them some guidance on safety issues and give them some guidance on fire code issues to help them become part of a fire safety team and really become advocates for fire safety. And Mayor Hale, you asked a really good question this morning about some of the older complexes that aren't sprinklered with a fire sprinkler system. And they were built obviously before the code required it. We have, for the buildings that are sprinklered, we have a really good program that the testing agencies have to give a report. We can access that on the cloud, and we're notified immediately if a system is past due for testing. So we're fairly confident with the units that have fire suppression systems in them. And we're going to be looking at statistics and data to see how we can help the others that aren't be more aware and be more fire safe. Again, your inspectors, Christian Yee especially in your Midvale area, they've taken some real ownership in this, some real concern for the safety of our citizens, and they've worked really hard to make a very positive initial first step. We let them know that we're going to be coming back every year, checking testing records and giving them more information and helping out any way we can to see if we can make an impact. I thought that was an important thing to share. The fire service, you hear a lot about our response to emergencies. The prevention end, I think, is just as important, and this is a really good proactive step. And I just wanted to share that briefly with everyone. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Chief, do you know, this Councilmember Gettle, do you know if they're having the fire school for elected officials this year?
Council member, I haven't heard anything on that yet, but I know who to ask.
Okay, because it's typically in May or June, May, right?
Yeah.
So speaking for Councilmember Brown, you know, we've been trying to go for a couple of years, and if they're having it this year, we'd like to just volunteer ourselves and maybe Councilmember Robinson as well. If they're having it, we can.
I'll jot a note to check tomorrow and get back with you on that. That's what they're thinking.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Any other questions for Chief Larson? Thank you, Chief Larson. We appreciate your efforts in behalf of our residential and commercial citizens of Midvale and helping them to maintain their safety and the lives of everyone who works, lives, and recreates in this city. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your service, and we look forward to the new Station 125. And by the way, Council, it was approved last time, last UFA meeting, and the money is now, I think they go to, let's see, they sold them already, and they got 1.82% interest on their bonds. So it was a magnificent sale of bonds to purchase 5 fire stations within the UFA service area. So ours will be probably the biggest of the 5. And I think it's ready to start as soon as the money hits our bank. Isn't that right, Chief?
That's what I understand, Mayor. You know, I tried to talk them into putting some fire prevention offices on the second floor, but I think they've got a closet for me somewhere there. So it didn't quite work out. It would have been nice.
Yes, it would. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Get back over to my agenda. That isn't it. Where did it go? Pardon me for just a second. Okay. So we have a guest with us. You can see his wonderful little icon there. That was cute. We have a proclamation. Welcome, Mr. Castleton. It's good to have you with us. We have a proclamation recognizing two of Canyon School District educators. One teaches at Hillcrest High School, Cleve Castleton, and the other, Milo Mon, teaches at Corner Canyon High School. And recently they were selected by NASA for the to be airborne astronomy ambassadors. And so we have a proclamation that I would like to now go to and read it to you. Whereas educators inspire the next generation and make it possible for students to realize their potential. And whereas NASA Airborne Astronomy Ambassadors is a professional development program for science teachers designed to improve science teaching and increase student learning and STEM engagement, science, technology, electronics, and math. I can still remember it. And whereas the innovative AAA, that's Airborne Astronomy Ambassadors program, brings NASA subject matter experts, research findings, and educational resources into science classrooms across the country. And whereas 30 teachers from 10 states have been selected to participate in the NASA-funded AAA program, and whereas AAA teachers receive training in astrophysics and planetary science, including a week-long STEM immersion experience at a NASA astronomy research facility, such as the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, and that has an acronym SOFIA or SOFIA. And whereas these teachers will use their professional development and SOFIA experiences to convey real-world content to their students that illuminate the value of scientific research and the wide variety of STEM career paths available to them. And whereas Canyon School District educators, Mr. Cleve Castleton from Hillcrest High School and Mr. Milo Mon from Corner Canyon High School have been chosen as 2021 NASA Airborne Astronomy Ambassadors. And whereas the sole Utah teachers to be selected to attend the prestigious astrophysics teacher training program that includes a flight into the stratosphere on a jumbo jet carrying a massive reflective telescope used to detect light sources from the depths of space. Now, therefore, I, Robert Hale, Mayor of Midvale City, hereby present this proclamation to Cleve Castleton and Milo Mon for their dedication to cultivating students' curiosity and interest in science. Well done. We applaud you very much. Thank you, Mr. Castleton. Would you like to share a few words about your experience as a science teacher here in our Hillcrest High School?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Midvale City Council. That's an honor. I appreciate that. This program is going to be an incredible tool to be able to engage students and get them to see that NASA isn't just for California, Florida, or Texas. They can actually look for these kind of opportunities here in Utah as well. And my experiences at Hillcrest have been amazing, and some of the best kids that I've ever had the opportunity to teach reside within the Hillcrest boundaries. So I'm looking forward to being able to bring back not only the curriculum and the knowledge, but the equipment that we're going to be able to have these kids conduct similar research, and the contacts where they can actually also talk to these professional astronomers and researchers and make connections there for potential future education and career opportunities.
There is no doubt that by providing this opportunity to your students, not only this year, but in years to come, it will be a catalyst for many of them to look with a different eyesight to the skies and to flight and to physics and all sciences within the STEM program. They'll get their scores up in math, I just know it, and it'll be a better future for all of us because of this little incident that you took advantage of, you and Mr. Mon, and applied, and because of your years of first-class teaching of science to these students, you have been selected. We congratulate you. We'll get this proclamation signed and over to you. And we also make note that Milo Mon is receiving the same proclamation tonight in Draper City Council. So congratulations to both of you. And my goodness, with the school rebuild, you guys have got to have just the best going for any teachers in the world right there in Hillcrest. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now have another proclamation. I wonder what this is about. I gotta find it. Okay, this is a proclamation honoring Mr. Kane B. Loader. Whereas Kane B. Loader, city manager, is recognized for his 32 years of dedicated service and leadership at Midvale City, and whereas Kane B. Loader began his career with Midvale City in 1989 as the water sewer supervisor and was quickly promoted to the Public Works Operations Superintendent in 1991, and whereas on July 1st, 1996, Kane B. Loader was promoted to the position of Public Works Director. And whereas in February 2000, Kane B. Loader resigned from Midvale City to work for Sandy City. Luckily and fortunately, he came to his senses, quickly realizing how much he loved Midvale City, and returned as the Public Works Director in April of 2000. And whereas Kane B. Loader earned the trust and respect of the community, city staff, and Midvale's elected leaders in the role of Public Works Director, and whereas Kane B. Loader was appointed to the position of the city manager by Mayor Joanne B. Sagini, and the appointment was unanimously approved by the Midvale City Council in January 2006, and whereas Kane B. Loader is recognized throughout Utah as a respected public servant for his leadership of and willingness to collaborate with organizations that benefit our community, including the Transjordan Landfill, the Humane Society of Utah, Valley Emergency Communication Center, Utopia, Unified Fire Authority, Unified Police Department, Utah League of Cities and Towns, Boys and Girls Club, Midvale Community Building Community, Wasatch Front Regional Council, State Homeless Coordinating Council, Jordan River Water District, Utah Local Government Trust, and many more. And whereas Kane B. Loader has guided Midvale City through the challenges of recession, natural disaster, and pandemic, and whereas for over 3 decades, Kane B. Loader has initiated or overseen the projects that have transformed Midvale, including the development of Bingham Junction and Jordan Bluffs redevelopment project areas, as well as the construction of Midvale's City Hall, Community Center, and numerous infrastructure projects. And whereas Kane B. Loader is an exceptional leader, mentor, and friend to the employees of Midvale City, and whereas Kane B. Loader worked tirelessly with Midvale's elected leaders, residents, and business owners over the years to uplift and improve our community. Now, therefore, I, Robert M. Hale, Mayor of Midvale City, and the Midvale City Council hereby present this proclamation to Kane B. Loader, City Manager, to be recognized for his leadership, service, and dedication to Midvale City and the Midvale community, adopted the 16th day of March, 2021.
Hey, Mayor, can I ask for one suggestion about this proclamation? Can we get it in Comic Sans so it sort of matches Kane's, personality a little bit better? I think that's the only thing that would make this just a little bit better.
It's still in an electronic form. I'll see if
I will do that for you. Yes, I will make it that way. Yes.
Thank you. And I guess also thank you, Kane, for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. After a speech, a proclamation like that, I'm speechless. It's been a great career. I've enjoyed every minute of my service to Midvale. I've enjoyed serving the elected officials of Midvale City, and your trust that you've put in me over these many years. Without that trust, I couldn't have accomplished the things that the mayor read in that proclamation. And I also have to thank the staff, the senior staff, Midvale City. I've been blessed to have great leaders in positions, and blessed to have some very talented people, some of the most talented people in the state of Utah, working for the city. And so I've been very, very blessed there. And then the citizens of Midvale, I've grown to love all of them. People used to say, well, you really don't care about Midvale. You don't live in Midvale. You work here, but you don't live here. My career was at Midvale, and I spent more time at Midvale City than I ever spent in my home. And I grew to love the citizens and the residents of Midvale City because of that. And they are great people there. And last but not least, the employees of Midvale City have always been near and dear to my heart. I started in 1989, as the proclamation said, and immediately got roped into what was called the QWL Committee, the Quality of Work Life Committee. And we morphed that committee into the Midvale City Employees Association back in the early 90s. And that association has grown stronger and stronger each year. And so I just have appreciated all the opportunities that I've been given to serve. And it's been just a fantastic career for me. And I thank all of you for the recognition and all of the staff. Thank you very much.
I think we have to also thank Virginia. She has lived a long life without you in her home. And she has paid the price for you to be with our city And we surely do express our appreciation to you.
Amen. Thank you.
I couldn't have done it without her. Thanks, Mayor.
No, no, you couldn't. No. I know I just love every time. I knew everything was under control when I would arrive at the city and see that Toyota Tundra parked out on the curb. I knew we were going to make it for another day. Okay. Now we're going to open up to public comments. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for public hearing on the agenda may submit their comment via email to lmagness@midvale.com prior to the completion of this portion of the meeting. Items brought forward to the attention of the City Council will be turned over to staff to provide a response outside of the City Council meeting. Laura Magnus, do we have any public comments this evening?
No, Mayor, I have not received any public comments at this time.
Thank you. We'll move forward then to council reports and begin with Council Member Dustin Gettle.
Thanks, Mayor. I had a couple of things I wanted to discuss, but I decided to move those to our next meeting. So I wanted to say thank you to Matt and Kane and the chief who worked on an issue with Unique Auto Body and their dumpster emptying, kind of being loud and vibrational to neighbors across the street and at Founders Point. And I think we've reached some sort of an agreement there that all parties are happy with. And, you know, it's one of those things, you think it's a dumpster, but it is a dumpster at Unique, who probably has like car fenders in their dumpsters. It's not just your standard run of the mill dumpster being emptied in the morning. So thank you to everyone who helped with that project. It's very much appreciated by me and the residents of Founders Point. Also, I wanted to thank Kane individually for, you know, all of your time here at Midvale. I'm sure, you know, all of us are going to have some great things to say about you. I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for your leadership. I couldn't have grown into the role of council member. I remember being absolutely terrified my first meeting, you know, but it's through your leadership and just the steady hand at the wheel that you've always had, and everyone has commented on, and also just your fund of knowledge that I think I mentioned to Laura when she was gathering quotes that, you know the most obscure details about nearly anything that's happened in Midvale over the past 30 years. And, you know, it'll definitely be, you know, that now I'm sure you'll be available, but might be a little harder to get a hold of you in the near future. But also, you know, one of the things we always say as elected officials is you look around and see how the city has changed. And, you know, that's a point of pride for us as council members. We say, oh yeah, we voted on that. You know, we voted yes. But, you know, for most of the development that's happened in Midvale, you've been the city manager for all of that. So it's something, you know, I hope that you take a lot of pride in as well, you know, being city manager for as long as you have, and public works manager before that. You know, this city and the development that it's gone through is just as much to your credit as it is to the elected officials' credit. And I want to make sure that, you know, you recognize our appreciation for all that you've done in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. That means a lot.
And that's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Quinn Sperry, please.
The only thing I have is, you know, to echo many of the other statements, to thank Kane and for all your years of service, for, you know, yes, your institutional knowledge and just everything you've done to help the city. And I know we'll be speaking more about that next week, so I don't want to, spoil everything with potentially what may be said. But really, thank you for all of that, and not just what you've done for the city, but also for your friendship and helping mentor me. And I've also seen it as other council members have come on. You really do make sure that we know what's going on and really helping us fulfill our roles to act in the best interest of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bryant Brown, please.
Yeah, I'll just spend a minute first to thank Kane as well. I do want to say that my biggest takeaway from Kane was that during my first budget retreat, I was terrified to talk money and kind of what I wanted and desires, and also to represent the Arts Council. The weird thing about the way elected officials work is you're elected, you're put in January, and then within like a month, you get an email on what do you want to see in the budget, and I was terrified because it's taxpayer money and you don't really know what the process, and you really helped guide me. It made me feel very comfortable with your support of the arts. I do know the Arts Council is going to miss you. That's one thing people can say about you is you've supported the arts for as long as I think anyone can remember. And, I think it's such an important piece of the city, and it's going to be missed. I think, whoever replaces you also support the arts too. So I'm not necessarily saying that, but you could just see it between you and Mayor Seguini, that you guys felt it was an important piece of Midvale. And so we appreciate that, and we appreciate you, and I appreciate that leadership. I did want to spend 2 seconds on something else to detour from Kane here. There is 2 UTA lights now. There's one on 7800 South, and there's one on 7200 South. The 7200 South UTA light by the tracks seems to randomly turn red and then yellow, and then it goes to green quickly. So even if the tracks don't go, the only reason I'm bringing this up right now is because it seems like a safety issue. I was driving on it today to come here, coming west on 7200 South, and then it quickly turned red, but the tracks, bar didn't come down, and then it quickly turned back to green. And it felt like if that happens regularly, there could be a wreck there. So I think we need to make sure UTA knows that it's doing that, and that it's pedestrian activated only or something along those lines. And to piggyback on that, the 78 one, that red light can go on forever, even if no one pushes the button. So in the mornings, traffic backs up past like Roosevelt, because that light turns red, the arms come down, no one is walking, arms come up, but the light stays red, and we have a lot of good citizens driving on a road, but they don't run that red light, but it causes unneeded traffic. So I felt like those are probably just safety issues that we should bring up, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Those are good points, and I've noticed that happen on 78. I haven't seen it happen on 72, but that doesn't mean it doesn't. Just I haven't seen it. Thank you for bringing that up. Councilmember Heidi Robinson, please.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to echo everybody's gratitude towards Kane. As the newest kid on the block, I can say without any hesitation how much your support has meant this last year. Coming right out of the gate, you were a huge help, and I really appreciate all of your support and friendship. So thanks.
Councilmember Paul Glover, please.
I'd also like to echo and thank Kane for his friendship, and we've gone through heck and high water together. So it's been a great pleasure of mine. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. In my report, I just forwarded to each of you a text message I received. I threw it over into an email so you could keep it, but let's see if I can bring it up here real quick. No, I can't find it. You all have to read it. We've received a WFRC grant For State Street Planning, they've reviewed our application and awarded us a sizable grant there. And so that's going to help along with the UTA projects, perhaps. Let's see if I can get over into sent items and read that. Yeah, I found it. WFRC has completed review of applications for our WFRC Transportation and Land Use Connection, TLC program, and the Midvale State Street Corridor Study has been selected for an award in 2021. We'll announce the full award list at the WFRC Regional Growth Committee Thursday at 9:30 in the morning. And we are also emailing your staff about it, but I wanted to let you know directly. As you know, TLC is jointly funded by WFRC, Salt Lake County, UDOT, and UTA. So they see some of the things that we need to get done in Midvale along our State Street corridor, and they've funded that grant to our cause, which is great. In working with UPD, as the Chief mentioned, we think we are going to have about a 3.9% increase in our UPD budget for the new year, which is well within our ability to take care of as a city without having an extra burden there. So we want to thank our UPD folks. Chief Thomas has been extraordinary in monitoring and setting the tone for expenditures in his precinct. And he is probably the best reason that we have a moderate increase coming in our UPD budget. So Chief, I wanted to express thanks to you for that. That's great work. It couldn't have been done without the whole team, but you are certainly calling the shots, and they're like a great quarterback. So we appreciate your efforts there. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Chief, to that very brief announcement.
No, Mayor, the one thing, and Kyle's aware of this, with the underspend from the previous year, the audit did result. They found there were some restrictions to some of that money, but that can easily be those funds that aren't restricted are certainly available at the city's discretion to apply towards the existing contract, which will easily put it to 3.5% with or lower if the city chooses to do so. And I think Lisa will discuss that at the UPD board as she presents the budget.
Thank you, Chief. A note that UFA, our fire authority, budget goal for fiscal 22 is also 3.5%. And both agencies have done a remarkable job during this COVID year of keeping the costs down, service up. And as a result of those efforts, our cost is going to be well within our ability to take care of as a city. It's been a hard year for businesses in Midvale, but we still have had a very modest growth in our sales tax. And so we appreciate all of our citizens and businesses for shopping in Midvale. It's helped keep our nose, even though it might be just a little bit above water, at least it's above water. We appreciate that, and Kyle will give us more on that when he makes his presentation. Let's see if I had anything else here. The county health department has told us that 20% of those who received the first dose are not returning for their second dose for a vaccination. I strongly recommend, if you know anybody that took one needle and not the second, that they need to get back and get that taken care of. We want to keep our citizens all healthy during this time, and we're not done until we're done. And there's baseball games have 9 innings, and it's not over till the fat lady sings. And I don't mean that derogatorily in any regard, but that's when we will call it done. Is when the health department says the pandemic is done. All basketball games have a whistle right at the end, or a buzzer, and it isn't over, because shots we saw in these playoffs, shots can be taken in the last 10th of a second and change the outcome of game in the high school games that we saw. So we need to make sure that we stay on it until it's over. Schools are going to be under a face mask order until at least the end of July. So that's to protect our youth who are not yet vaccinated. They need to stay healthy. We're looking for April 10th as the end of the mask mandate if you are with people who have been vaccinated. If you are with people that have not been vaccinated, it's recommended you continue to wear your mask and help them stay healthy. Okay, I think that's all of my pertinent notes for tonight. So we'll now move to City Manager's report. And Kane, this is your swan song. So,
well, you know what, Mayor, I'll let Matt go first, and I'll back clean up tonight.
Okay, you got it, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate being able to take a little bit of time out of the city manager's report, especially this evening, in order to just go over some discussions that we've been having about how to transition towards normalcy as COVID winds down. Clearly, we're not past it, as the mayor said, but we wanted to talk to you about some plans that we've been discussing about returning to in-person public meetings, and then also talk about some of the operations that we're looking at within our city facilities. And then we just want to make sure that you're on this, that you agree with what we're looking at. If you have any suggestions or anything, please do. This is intended to be a discussion on the topic. However, whatever we end up with tonight, we'll be wanting to communicate to the staff as soon as tomorrow so that they know what's coming up. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Do you see my PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So first thing I want to talk about is while we've been talking about our plans about sort of returning to normal, we've always sort of discussed, at least for what we're considering the first phase of returning to normal, that we would still require everyone to social distance and wear a mask. The CDC currently recommends that even those that have been vaccinated, unless they're with a family group that everyone's been vaccinated, that even vaccinated people continue to wear a mask as well as unvaccinated people. We know that, so HB 294 was the bill, boy, that was supposed to say this bill, not this mill, but anyways, HB 294, this just came up today in a meeting that Lisa was in with a group of attorneys sort of talking about a variety of issues, including this bill. And there are some attorneys that interpret HB 294 as indicating that we can't even require people to wear masks in City Hall. So on April 10th, the requirement goes away as a state mandate, but we might not be able to say that people coming into City Hall would still need to wear a mask, or that employees would wear a mask. Now that's up for debate. There are other attorneys that think that we could still do that. So that will play into some of the plans that we're talking about, and we'll need to continue to kind of work on that and try to come up with either a consensus or at least the view of what this bill really does, that the most people agree to, and then sort of adjust our plans. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we continue to go forward and talk about the proposals. Now, as we talk about returning to in-person public meetings, what we're proposing for you to consider, and again, opening up for discussion, is that starting April 6th, so our next city council meeting, we would allow city council and planning commission meetings to have people attend in person, that the city council meeting and planning commission members, as well as staff, may still attend electronically as well as in person, which is allowed under our ordinance. And then what we would look at doing is having the meetings be held in the the council chamber, as well as being broadcast in the Dahl conference room and online. The reason we'd put it in the Dahl conference room is that our intent is that we would keep the rooms at sort of half capacity, or thinking about it in the city council chambers, we'd just remove one chair between each of the chairs that are in the normal configuration. And because potentially there might be more people who want to attend than are available in the chamber, that's why we would allow them to watch in the Dahl conference room. We've talked with the IT staff and to make sure that there wouldn't be a problem with us sort of having this simulcast in two different rooms as well as online, and having the potential of council members being in the room and not in the room, and staff members not in the room and in the room. Because of the changes that were made with the CARES Act money last fall, we should be able to accommodate that. So we've been looking into that. Additionally, we would continue, at least through the first phase of this, to take comments in person so that they can come up to the podium and talk, as well as continue to take them online. Comments received online would be still read by someone so that you know what those comments are. And then we would ask all attendees to still be required to practice social distancing and wear masks. That is what we would propose, at least for the next meeting. Now, the sign or the mask ordinance, the mask mandate goes away April 10th. We have one meeting before that occurs. And so this definitely is something as described, which is allowed through that April 6th date. For the April 20th, that's where we'll have to look into and see if we can still require people to wear masks. So before I move on to the next section, I was just wondering if you thought this was the right sort of caution in returning to public meetings, or too much caution. Do you have any thoughts on any of these proposals for our next meeting?
Matt, I have a question. I like the timeline. I think it's a generous timeline. But logistically, I do see some issues, because unless we're all here, then, let's say Council Member Glover is at home for the meeting. We're not going to be able to hear him if we're all here at City Hall and he's at home on his iPad. And the same, if someone presents to us remotely, we can't hear them unless if we're all here in the City Hall. And it's great that we have the cameras and everything set up here, but that doesn't do us any good if someone's remoting in to the meeting.
So with the changes that we made last fall, our screens and the speakers would allow someone to speak and come out on the speakers in the room during that meeting. So we would be able to allow people to present and speak and be heard, and also be seen on the TV screens in the room during the meeting.
Is that in here or in the Dahl Conference Center, or both?
As far as the council chambers go, you will be able to hear and see them as they're speaking. Yeah, I guess it would work the same way in both rooms. It would work the same way.
And I think it might be beneficial, and maybe IT has already done so, just to do some sort of dry run because I would hate to, have our meeting on the 6th or the 20th be, just complete technological disaster.
Right. They have been working on it and spending quite a bit of time sort of already testing it, just so that I could tell you this evening that those things would work.
Okay.
And but they will continue to, test and retest just to make sure that everything is going to be in order for April 6th. Now, that's still a lot of pressure because I still had to think for a second on how to get the my PowerPoint to show up on the screen. So I'm not trying to say that it will be absolutely smooth, but we'll have it practiced enough that we'll be able to get things figured out really quick if there are any hiccups.
Okay. That was my only concern, is just that technological point of it. But to your point, even when we had all in-person meetings, we had technical difficulties from time to time. It will happen. I'm not saying it's going to be cut to zero, but this just has the potential of, if all 5 council members and the mayor aren't here, we might be missing 2 or 3 of them, and then we don't have a quorum, and then we don't have a meeting. So,
right.
But yeah, as long as everyone's got their eye on that prize, that's great.
Any other comments on this? The capacity issue or masks, does anyone disagree that kind of through, you said, Dustin, you had said that was a generous timeline. I can't remember, you used some words like that. Are you saying that we should make it, having this system through the 31st is too much?
No, I just meant getting back to being in person, as far as council members and the mayor go. But yeah, I think that we should require masks for, as long as we possibly can, until the governor's office says, hey, you can't do that anymore, or there's some consensus from our legal team. There's no point to relaxing the mask mandate inside our building until we absolutely have to. That's my opinion on it.
Any other opinions on this process?
I'm good to go in person. I think that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
I prefer in person. I'm currently at City Hall right now, so I would like us all to be here, eventually. So I like the direction we're going.
Okay.
I'm fine either way. I will be out of state on the first meeting in April, so I will be remoting in that day.
Okay.
Having said
Matt,
that, I'm going to be out of state too that day, the first one.
Okay.
And Matt, what sort of, and maybe you can discuss this in the future, but what sort of enforcement mechanism are we going to have? Because I know, if someone comes to City Hall and they have a public comment and they don't wear a mask, what are we going to do? Is it up to us as council members to say, put your mask on or you won't be heard?
We'll have to work on that a little bit more. Some of that also may have to do with the interpretation of that 294 and whether or not we can require masks, but I don't have a solid answer for that one right now.
Okay, well, stay tuned.
Great. Next thing I want to talk about is just some of the changes that we're making to our city operations during this sort of same time frame. We are starting this April 12th, and I know it might sound a little, might see some issues there given that we're not starting at the same time as going back to in-person meetings. Part of this is just making sure that if there's any bump in COVID cases because of spring break, that we've provided enough time frame to sort of see that and not start to reduce the restrictions that we have on staff just in time to, for there to be more COVID cases. So what we're looking at is from April 12th to May 31st is that we would make some changes, which would include requiring all staff members to work on site and in the building for at least 20 hours per week. There's just a handful of employees that don't meet this now. They've been working at home most of the time since last March, and then some other people who are working sort of part-time in the office. And so we just want to start moving people sort of back to normalcy. And so we would require that they'd spend half their week in the building. The other thing is we've been saying that there is no work travel since last March. We're saying that we would be willing to allow that to occur for people who need continuing education credits for their licensure, but that we would suggest that people who do travel, particularly out of the state, that they take added precautions when they return. So that would include for people who can work from home, that they do work at home from home until they get a negative COVID test, or that if they are unable to work from home to get their job done, that they would just sort of take some additional precautions in order to ensure that they're not spreading any COVID if they could have picked it up on the travel. And then allowing for some exceptions to the requirements on a case-by-case basis. This is particularly put in there because we need to send a group out of state to get some experience with the vacuum sewer system that we're putting in the Jordan Bluffs project area. And so that doesn't necessarily come with continuing education credits, but as an example of an exception that will be made to this travel policy. Again, if you guys are good with it. Next thing is that as far as vaccinations go, everyone's insurance should cover it, but in case for some reason they don't, we could have the potential to pay for people to get the vaccination. In addition to that, we'll cover the time that it takes for employees to get the vaccination, provided they schedule that with their manager. And then what we're asking is that employees provide proof of the vaccination to the human resources so that we can kind of keep tabs on what percentage of our staff has been vaccinated. Ever since this started, we've been providing an emergency sick leave for those folks who either need to quarantine because they might have become exposed to COVID-19 or that actually got COVID-19. You'll recall when we updated the executive order around this issue around the end of the year, we had allowed for people to continue to collect hours on this. We would expect that we would continue to offer this through at least May 31st, and we'll talk about it some more as we get to May 31st if we want to keep doing that. And then as far as City Hall goes, we would still, whether you've been vaccinated or not, we would still be asking people to practice social distancing, continuing to wear a mask until, as someone said earlier, until we get the direction from the CDC or the local health department that those things are no longer necessary, unless, of course, HB 294 says that we can't actually require this either, but that's the plan. And then as far as, again, for this first phase, what we would like to do is tell staff that we still want there to be sort of an online first approach when dealing with the public, meaning that if they can get the services online or are willing to set up a Teams meeting or something like that to discuss whatever their issue is, that's what we encourage first. However, we will allow for public meetings or meetings in person with the public to occur, though we're going to try to get staff to use conference rooms where, based on the number of people in the room, we can still staff it at half capacity to try to help with social distancing. That in general is sort of some of the things we're looking to change in this first phase as we return to normalcy. Does anyone have any questions about any of these proposed changes to city operations?
Real quick, Matt, I was just thinking that the April 12th, is there a consensus among everyone that that's a good time to start bringing everybody back at least half time? I feel like, if I'm being honest, I feel like that's a little early. Since, the general population, what was that, April 1st? Is that when the governor has decided that, that just anyone is eligible for the vaccine? I don't know that April 12th accounts for, the vast majority of our employees that are 50 and younger might just be getting their first dose of a vaccine by then. So yeah, I don't know. That has me a little nervous. That April 12th date seems a little, just by comparison, the state of Utah, we're slated to go back to the office in July, starting July 1st. which seems a more reasonable deadline to me anyway. So just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so right now there's less than 10, like maybe 7 people who I think that return to at least 20 hours a week would affect. Most of the city hall staff is in on some sort of part-time basis already. Public Works is back full-time, operating sort of as normal. And so that change wouldn't have a significantly dramatic impact on everyone. Plus, it would have some ability for us to stagger employees so like they're not all coming in on Monday and Tuesday, but we might be able to sort of make it so that those additional staff members could come in a different time frame. I hear what you're saying. I have heard from some staff some concern about returning. And I guess my feeling is as we look at other cities, I hear what you're saying about the state. There's a lot of other cities that are just operating as normal. And so this felt like the reason I'm recommending it is it did seem like sort of a transition that doesn't require everyone to be here full time. That will help us sort of when we get back to that date where we sort of require everyone to be back in the office. But some thought has gone into that, but I hear your concern. And if others have that same concern, we could look at adjusting that.
Okay, and I would just suggest that, you know, if one of the 7 folks who, you know, it would impact, if they have some legitimate concern about it, I would just ask that you and other staff members, you know, take that concern seriously and try to work with them. And, you know, even if it's like, hey, would you feel more comfortable coming back May 1st, you know, once you have been vaccinated or have been given the opportunity to be vaccinated? Just, you know, don't, and I'm sure you won't, I'm just saying, you know, take those case by case scenarios and, you know, try to work with that employee as much as possible. I think that would be great for everybody.
Okay. Does anyone else have any?
Yeah, Matt, on the travel one, because the League of Cities and Town has their conference, right, in April. So how does that impact the travel? Because aren't there some employees that would usually go down to that conference?
There are, but I have not heard anyone say that this is particularly problematic for them this year with regards to that.
The league is
but I can double check that.
That anybody attending the St. George Conference have a negative test proof within 72 hours of appearing in St. George. So I've got a calendar on that Monday prior to St. George to go have one of those tests before I go down to St. George. So that's what they're doing.
All right.
Okay. Anything else on this one? All right. One more just quick thing. So under this particular plan, that gets us through May 31st. In April, we'll need to sort of talk about, based off of where we're at with COVID rates and vaccinations, about sort of what the next steps are towards, again, returning to normal. So some of the items that we'll need to discuss during that time frame would be, as you're aware, right now we've had City Hall closed on Fridays. There's definitely an interest in continuing that schedule, and so we'll just want to talk with you about that. We'll need to talk about if we're going to continue to use the emergency paid sick leave. We're going to need to discuss if we continue to go with the sort of online first approach, or if we're just sort of saying we're back open to the public per the norm. And of course, we'll have to address masks and that kind of stuff. Like I said, we can cover that at future meetings. So I appreciate your feedback. Like I said, based off of some of the comments that you provided and what we've put together, we'll send out an email to staff to let them know sort of what the transition is going to look like. So unless there's any other questions, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt. Kane?
Thanks, Mayor. Well, this is my last opportunity to take parting shots. what I wanted to say tonight is the fact that, it's been said earlier that Midvale has meant a lot to me for 32 years. It's been, Midvale has been my pride and joy. And one of the things that I thought about as I was contemplating retiring and leaving Midvale is I wanted to leave Midvale in good hands. And that actually started probably 6 to 8 months ago. And just a little background, when I took over as city manager, I had no aspirations whatsoever to be the city manager. I got a call from the police chief at the time, Gerald Mon, said that him and Chief Higgs, the fire chief, wanted to take me to lunch. And they took me out to lunch, and I couldn't figure out why all of a sudden they wanted to take me out to lunch. But they announced that I needed to throw my hat in the ring and be the public, or to be the city manager. And I said I was perfectly happy with staying as the public works director, and would gladly support one of them stepping up and being the city manager. And they said, no, it's got to be you. And there was a lot of trepidation, consternation, whatever you call it, as to if I wanted to do that or not, because I knew it was a big job, and I didn't know that I had the formal training to do it. But the one thing that I did find out from them is I had the support of the staff, and that meant a great deal to me. And that's probably the main reason that I stepped up and said, yeah, I would like to be the city manager. And then having the support of the city council and the mayor was the second thing that I found out that was very important to me. And so knowing that going into this, I tried to prepare Matt and given him an opportunity to lead. And I'm here to tell you that Matt's a great leader. He's prepared. I know that the mayor and the city council has not acted on this officially, but I just wanted to put a plug in that Matt can handle this job. He's proven time and time again over the past several months that he's a leader. The city staff and the employees of the city will follow him. And that is a key thing to the success of the city manager, is having staff and your senior staff and employees that will follow you. And so I've been very impressed with what he's done and accomplished. I want to see Midvale continue on. This is me speaking, but I want to see Midvale continue on and be the great place that it is. And it's become. I remember when I first took over and we were dealing with starting the development of Bingham Junction. My wife come home from Riverton pretty upset about a staff meeting where the mayor at the time asked the question to the staff, do you want to be like Murray or do you want to be like Midvale? And my wife spoke up and said, what are you talking about? Have you seen what's going on in Midvale? And this is right as Winco and the Riverwalk area was starting to develop. And actually the mayor came over and took a look at what was going on in Midvale and came back and said, I apologize. And I realized that your husband's the city manager there and you have a lot of pride, and he has a lot of pride in what's going on in Midvale. And I stand corrected. There are a lot of good things going on in Midvale. And that's the way I would like to see Midvale continue on. There are so many opportunities to make Midvale the greatest little city in all of the state and all of Salt Lake County. And I just want to continue on with the great work we're doing together as a team, the staff and the city council and the mayor. And I think I'm putting a plug in for Matt. I know he didn't know I was going to do that tonight, but he's the man. Sure call, but he's the man. I'm telling you, he's the man. That's all I got to say, Mayor. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kane. You certainly trained a cadre of senior management in this city for generations. And so we owe a lot of thanks to your foresight and vision of what this little city can become. And thank you for everything. And a reminder that there is going to be a farewell barbecue in honoring Kane on Thursday, the 25th. I believe it's at noon down at the city community center, there in the park, in the northeast corner of the park. So set your calendars. Public Works is going to perform their magic on meat and barbecue up a good meal. And we'll get together. We've got some things we want to present to Kane. I don't know if he's ready for them, but we're going to give them to him anyway. And we want all of you there too. Matt, you wanted to add in?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just, Kane, I appreciate everything that you said, and it's been a tremendous opportunity for me to work with you. And I wish I had more time. with you. But that being said, I also did just want to, just a couple more things on that event next week, is that, as the mayor said, there's going to be the barbecue going on from 12 to 2. Then the follow-up event where we've invited people from outside the organization will be from 2 to 4. And that there will be a sort of a program of speakers that will go on during that 2 to 4 time frame, as well as a couple of other opportunities for us to recognize Kane. So I hope you can come to as much of that as you can.
Mayor, can I say just a couple words? I'll be quick.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I wanted to tell Kane what I tell him every year in his Christmas card. And that is, I want to say it publicly, and that I can't thank you enough for giving me the opportunity and asking me to be in this position. I've always believed that it's mainly been because you wanted Garrett and he hadn't passed the bar yet, and you needed me to get him. And that's fine. I agree. I'll take it. But when I would talk to other city attorneys and they knew I started at Midvale, and they'd just say, "Oh, you get to work with Kane." And Midvale has always been revered. The staff and just working the environment in Midvale has been because of Kane and because of the environment he's created, you created. And it's just something from the outside that you don't know until you get inside what a tremendous leader and how respected you are in the entire community. So thank you.
Great comments. Thank you, Lisa. All right. Well, we wish you well, Kane. We'll see you again real soon, and especially a week from Thursday. So.
And stick around for the meeting, though.
We have next our departmental reports. And Nate, would you like to guide us through what's happening in community development these days, RDA?
I kind of feel funny following up all of that. I have enjoyed working with Kane, and was a resident of Midvale for 5 years, and came to a lot of council meetings. So,
Nate, you're coming through really, really gravelly. It's hard to understand you. I don't know if you can improve that audio or not.
Switch.
Does that sound better? Okay, good. Okay. Kyle told me I sounded like a robot, so I'm not sure that's better than gravelly or not. Just a couple of items that I wanted to update council on. The mayor already talked about the grant, but just wanted to thank Alex. Alex put that grant in for the State Street corridor study, and that'll be a great study and an asset to the city that hasn't been a study on the State Street for a while, so that really needs to be updated. And it is quite a lot. So with the city match, it'll be about 150,000 that we could put in that, and that will give a very good study and a very good plan for State Street. The fire station, we did talk about that. Council will see a text amendment on the 6th for that, and then in the next 4 to 6 weeks, an approval of the final site plan. So that is on schedule, and has gone really well. The last item that I wanted to just update council on, and this is from an RDA standpoint and from a community development standpoint, is the RDA staff and the community development staff have been working hard on all sorts of different aspects on the revitalization and redevelopment of Main Street. And those are all kind of coming together. And so on the next meeting on the 6th of April, we'll bring back an in-depth discussion on all the different components of the Main Street plans, the Main Street programs, and we'll go through those in detail and how they all fit together. And we'll also give an update on the on how form-based code fits into this. And really, as we look at that, the small area plan called for several different things to come out of or to go into the Main Street area. And it had it in phases. One of those early phases was the form-based code. But as we've looked at that, and as we've worked with the different taxing entities, and we're just about there with all the different entities on getting the CDA in place, we really thought that we didn't really want to phase a lot of these things in. So we've been working really hard to get all of these different components so that we can hit the Main Street on all sides and really get some good things going there. The form-based code was one of those first things that went in, and it kind of regulates and sets the parameters of what we want to see there. But zoning in itself doesn't create redevelopment. It really is incentives and all of these different programs. So we're excited to come back, show those to you, and you'll see how those all fit to create this Main Street that we really want to see. So we're excited about doing that. There's several different programs that we've developed out to the point that they're ready to roll out now. So that's where we're going with that. And we found ways to put a lot of significant funding into that right up front, so that we're hitting it with everything we got. So we're excited about doing that. We're looking forward to that. The RDA staff, planning staff, engineering have all been working on different elements of that are all coming together in a really meaningful way. So those are the items that I have. If there's any
Thank you,
questions.
Nate. Lots of good things coming soon. Right, now, you have any questions for Nate on any of his projects? Okay, we'll turn our attention now to Kyle and let you make up for lost territory here now.
Thank you, Mayor. For the sake of time, I will just be hitting the big points. I will, of course, give the slide deck to the city recorder to be in the minutes, and I can also send this out separately. Since we're doing things a little differently this year, tonight's discussion focuses on the Departments of Administrative Services and the budget requests for next year. These budget requests that I'm going to be discussing are not recommendations by the city staff or the budget officer. It's really what the departments are requesting. And some things you'll see. The salary amounts only include the remainder of the merit increases that were approved in January. Not to steal Rory's thunder, I was hoping she'd be the one to tell you that exciting news is that our insurance renewal came back at 0%. So our rates are going to be the same as last year, which I don't think has happened I don't know if it actually has ever happened. I've been in governmental accounting for close to 20 years and I've never had a 0% renewal. So that's the exciting news there. And then finally, the intent of these presentations is not to decide if these expansion requests will get funded or not. It really is just to give you some information. If you have any questions before the budget retreat, you're certainly welcome to ask them. I will be skipping these pages. I did do a slide for each department, just giving a brief overview and then the staff members that are in that department. The Justice Court has a fairly simple budget next year. Working with the court administrator, she felt all of her expense line items didn't need adjustment. So really the only increase is the remainder of the mid-year merit increases. And then there was some career ladders that are scheduled to occur. And then we did do a classification adjustment. And one thing to note on this bar chart, you might notice a fairly substantial increase from fiscal year 2020 to the fiscal year 2021 base. There were a large number of line items that were underspent last year due to the court having reduced functions. So we really aren't increasing their base budget. We did leave their base budget the same, but it does explain why you're seeing some of those increases because they had underspend during the year. In finance, there was quite a few things that are happening. The first one is we are going to transfer the budget for the procurement and contract specialist from the legal department to the finance department. So it's really not an increase between finance and legal. It was just transferring the money. So, but it is a $91,000 increase to finance. On the flip side, there is a personnel decrease in finance due to reclassifying the finance director to a senior accountant. And a small increase. One thing we did was, thanks to the public works director, we moved the water meter technician under finance, so they're more working closely with utility billing and some of those issues we're having in billing. Part of that is moving his supplies into finance, where finance has budgetary control over those line items. There are a couple expansion requests that I will be making for finance. The first one is $20,000 to set up an internal audit function that would be administered by an external accounting firm. I don't have a lot of detail on this yet. It's something I would like to discuss with the audit committee and get their thoughts and opinions on how they'd like to move forward. The next one is for software totaling $38,000. $28,000 of that is new budget software, or actually budget software we really don't have any right now, that would allow online submission by departments to put in their budgets instead of putting it on spreadsheets and then me having to key it in and doing a lot of manual calculations. The price does drop in future years to $17,000, and then another $10,000 for comprehensive annual financial report preparation software to help compile that 130-page document we produce every year. These two expansion requests could be funded by the personnel savings from that reclassification. And when I proposed that reclassification, that was my intent, was to find ways to streamline and make the department more efficient, so we didn't need such a high level of employee in that position. So overall, this department's budget, if all the items were approved, would decrease $7,000. And just as a note, my top request would be the budgeting software. In information technology, they do have quite a few requests. This first one is the IT director's #1 priority, and it's disaster recovery storage. So currently right now, we do have backups being routinely done. Of course, routinely, only one of those per week is going offsite. So if there was a natural disaster in the city that wiped out our servers, or the unfortunate happened, we were a victim of a hacking attack or some other type of cyber attack, we could potentially lose up to a week of data. We would have that backup that's offsite, but we still would lose at least a week of data. There's a couple different options with this. We are still looking at pricing and options. The first one is the preferred one would be to actually store, it's electronically, of course, offsite, and do data backups offsite. The high estimate of that is $30,000. It would be at a site in Texas, and it would routinely be backing up. So if, for example, we were hit with a natural disaster, a major earthquake, or a hacking attempt, we could potentially only lose minutes of data, and we could be back up fairly quickly. Another option IT has looked at is putting a storage, basically a server at Public Works, and we would back up data to that server, which would be a one-time cost of $57,000. There is a way we can reduce that cost even further with one of the other requests. Some additional replacement of storage that's needed, we could move the old storage over to Public Works and they would handle that. Then we would just need to buy cooling equipment for Public Works. The big downfall with option number 2, in the event of a natural disaster, if we had a major earthquake or flood or something, most likely if it affected City Hall, it's also going to affect Public Works. But in the case of such a hacking attack or something like that, or a cyber attack, it would be a good option for us. Their next request is we do have some servers that are no longer supported. In addition, we have 2 more servers that are at end of life. And what end of life means is that the manufacturer is not making the parts anymore for that server. So the software company is still supporting it, but if for some reason a part's needed, the parts aren't being made anymore, and we most likely would have to replace it anyway. The minimum that we would need to replace those 2 servers would be $18,000. If we did the additional 2 that are at end of life, that would be $36,000. The IT department's ultimate wish would be we replace all the servers at the same time, so they're all running the same software. It makes maintenance much easier for them. That would be $50,000, but the IT director isn't requesting that at this time, but that's just to give you an idea, if we were to place all the servers, what that would cost. And I went a little too far. So the third one is we have Nimble storage. So that's the quick storage that all of the city's documentation and files are on. Our storage was at the end of life of 2019, meaning they weren't making replacement parts after that date, and then support for those drives will end in 2023. Replacement will cost $60,000, and I did ask, it is 1 unit, so it's not a matter of we could replace a third or half at a time. It has to be done in one shot. However, there is an option, as I discussed, we were talking about different backup options for storage, disaster recovery. There is the option of moving this Nimble storage to Public Works, and then using, of course, the new replacement to do our Nimble storage. So that would save $50,000 of cost at Public Works storage if we went that route. The final request from the IT department is for a security assessment. So what this would be is a third-party company would come in and look and do different IT tasks, such as penetration testing, reviewing the city's ports, firewalls, DMZs, all of the network ins and outs. The city would get a report showing the areas we were proficient in, and then also a list of areas that we were deficient in, and we would also get a letter grade. And our IT department will get an action plan for how to fix some of those deficiencies. The cost would be around $20,000 for that. So overall, on just their strictly operating budget, so this isn't including any of those expansion requests I just talked about, since there's some different factors with those, since some of those are just one-time costs, others have ongoing costs. The personnel increase is just strictly due to the mid-year merit increase. I do have to give credit to our IT director. So we were able to decrease our regular ongoing operating costs by $4,300. We literally sat down and went line by line and made sure we had the budget as lean as possible. We had originally discussed possibly needing to increase the budget for the new phone software that we purchased this year. And just by doing that very detailed analysis, we were able to cover it with the existing budget of the IT department. Finally, the administrative services admin budget. So this is my budget. The personnel is just the remainder of the mid-year merit increase, and then I'm requesting no increase in my operating expenditures. I got the budget pretty dialed down when we went through our COVID reduction, so I didn't see a need for any increases. So with that, that is my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have any comments, I'd be happy.
Questions or comments? Go ahead.
I have one question. We had this discussion, I guess, last year or the year before, and it was involving our council and mayoral pay. And we had set it up that we had an amount that we put in our ordinance. This is what council gets paid. This is what the mayor gets paid. But the way I understood it, and other council members can weigh in, it was supposed to be a line item budget each year that council and mayor would get the same cost of living increase, so that to prevent the fact that, you know, typically 5 or 10 years later, you do an increase and you take it all together and say, well, we haven't increased the mayor or the council's pay for 10 years, so let's do it all at once. I have noticed that that didn't happen in the new budget, and I'm just wondering if that was something that's being considered, or how we're going to address that. Because I don't want to get to the point where we're 3 years behind and have to do 6 to 10% increases instead of the 2.
Right. Matt, do you want to cover that, or do you want me to cover that?
I can cover that. And then when I'm wrong, you can correct me on it. So you're right. We will look back at that provision that was put into the ordinance. And what it says is that there would be an automatic, there would be no need to go back for a public hearing as long as your pay was increased by the CPI. And what happened was that last year during the budget, we indicated that no one was going to get an increase, and we did not make a change to that with the budget amendment that occurred at the end of the year. It is something that we could still look at, but when we looked at what the CPI increase is, not to say that we shouldn't do it anyways, it was a number that was less than 1%. And so we could still go back and make that adjustment at a budget opening that could occur like the spring. But we were anticipating that would be something that would probably be addressed as part of the upcoming budget year for whatever adjustments you want to make. So if we had not held everyone flat last year, then that was an increase that would have happened without having to do the standard sort of public hearing on it.
I'm totally fine foregoing, what increase we would have had with the last fiscal year. Everyone kind of, tightened their belts for that. But, I just want to make sure, the point of, there was a good point in the way that we did it before, and it is, trying to avert public controversy when, those things happen. Whereas, you say, we're going to increase it by 10%, which is what, you probably should have been increasing your public officials' salaries. And also we need to keep our pay in line with the pay of other councils and mayors. And, that was all what we discussed. I can't remember if I think it was 2 years ago now. So, I'm not saying, I personally don't want any sort of back pay to the last budget cycle, but again, there was pretty good reason why we did it that way. And I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the shuffle in the upcoming fiscal year.
And I do think, and we can have further discussions on this for sure, but like I was saying, the increase, if we just go with what's allowed in that ordinance, the CPI increase is very, very small.
It was 0.8%.
What was it?
0.8%.
0.8%. And so I would recommend that we would look at making another, at least looking at making a more significant increase in the upcoming budget. But that's of course up to you guys. But something that we'd have to look at. But then again, based on the ordinance, that would require there to be a separate sort of process as part of that and public hearing on that increase. But because of this, just how small that CPI increase is, it's not really helping you sort of keep up with the market.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't want to get lost in the weeds with it tonight, but just, want to make sure it's on the radar screen for the future. I just hate to see those. We did, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the pay went from 12,000 to 15,000 for a council member. And that's a pretty significant jump that, the average person in the public sees that and they're like, oh my God, I'd love to get that percentage of an increase in my pay. And, just as much as we can avoid that, I would love to do so.
So, Councilmember Ghetto, one thing we will be doing as part of the retreat is discussing any potential increases for the city employees. So I'll make sure that's also a discussion topic at that time.
Okay, thank you. And I still am going to object to the word retreat.
That's fair.
Duly noted. Maybe I can come up with something as good as Mudget. We'll see.
Is that everything, Kyle?
It is. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to the consent agenda. We'll first consider minutes for March 2nd and then approve ordinance number 2021-0-06, amending section 8.08.080 of the Midvale Municipal Code regarding disposal of community refuse, bulky waste, and recyclable items to allow recycling services by authorized and qualified entities.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Mayor, we need a roll call.
Oh, yes. I just tested you.
Good job.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So, Rory, would you call the roll on that vote?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Brown.
Yes.
And Gettle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is an action item to consider resolution number 2021-R-10, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Momentum Recycling to perform curbside glass recycling pickup within Midvale City. Director Kennedy, would you give us the skinny on that, please?
Yes. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as the mayor just stated, this is to discuss and take action regarding resolution number 2021-R10. We'll just get started. So a quick brief history. Momentum approached the city a month or so ago, a couple months ago, to gauge interest in a curbside glass recycling program. Council showed definite interest in that program, and staff worked to facilitate it through ordinance changes, created some applications and processes to make it happen. Thank you, Garrett, very much. And all necessary actions have been completed by city staff to facilitate moving forward. I went too far. Hang on, I'm struggling. There we go. So the application requirements, active business license, detailed overview of their operation plan, which we'll go over in a minute. They've provided their all their insurance documentation relating to commercial liability and workers' comp. Part of the process is to get written authorization letter from our contracted waste hauler, which is currently ACE, so that there's no competition there. And then written authorization from the processing facility that the materials will be delivered. In this case, Momentum delivering to themselves, so that was easy. Momentum has completed and fulfilled all the application requirements and is seeking approval this evening. Quick overview of their operations. So subscribing, Momentum is ready. They have a sign-up page and an FAQ section on their website, which can be reached via that link. The cost, there's a one-time setup fee for residents of $25 or for subscribers, and $8 per month for service after that. It's month to month, can be canceled anytime, and there are no other fees associated. Momentum will provide each subscriber with a wheeled 35-gallon container that will be sealed and leak-proof. The vehicles that they will be using are semi-automated. They will require the driver to exit the vehicle, which is actually a good thing. They can make sure that the area is clean and inspect the bin before they leave. Collection dates will be the last Monday of each month. Subscribers may opt into a collection reminder system. And my understanding is that they can choose via a phone call or a text to remind them of collection days where it is just once a month. This is not going to replace the city's drop-off glass locations. This will augment that program. And that's an overview of their operation. Jason Utgard is here this evening with Momentum. Are there any questions for myself or Jason?
Glenn, this may surprise you, but I have a question.
Okay.
Two questions, actually. So first, in our initial discussions in this, you yourself mentioned some concern that you had, as far as it potentially increasing the public works, either, just kind of work that you guys had to do. I remember there were some concerns about that. Does this new plan alleviate those fears that you had?
Yes,
before?
yes, very much so. And it wasn't necessarily a workload for public works, more so utility billing and those things. But Momentum is going to handle all of that.
Okay, so public works, and you're completely on board if we go through with. Okay,
absolutely.
Cool. The second thing, just in speaking with Councilmember Robinson, she mentioned last week we did tour Momentum's facility in some city that I've never been in before. I don't we were so far west, so I'm not sure exactly where. But anyway, they had great designs, and Jason showed us the design of the glass collection bin, the one that we have at the school right now. Do you know that if there's any problem with us also going with Momentum for that glass, the central location, just because, I think, number one, it'd be good to have the same company doing all of our glass pickup, I think. And also, I think the vision that they have of the glass collection centers is, just a little bit better than what we have now. And, it's something that I think will actually beautify that part of the city. It's hard to think of a beautification of a glass collection center, but as they showed us before, they have like an actual public art kind of component to their central glass pickup location. So I'm just wondering if we can, just talk to ACE or whoever does it now. I believe it's ACE, and see if we can get Momentum to do that as well.
Yeah, sure. We can have further discussions on that, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about the dumpster enclosure itself?
Yes.
changing that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We could definitely have further conversations and discuss that with ACE.
Okay. That'd be
Currently,
great.
currently the glass is going to Momentum. The difference would be, I guess, Momentum would be providing the bin and doing the hauling rather than ACE. Is that?
Yeah, it just,
the direction
and speaking to Jason, and maybe Jason can weigh in, it definitely seemed to me anyway that having Momentum do it, it makes the most sense anyway. And probably ACE wouldn't, put up too much of a struggle in passing all of that along to them.
Okay. Yeah, we would just need to look into costs and make sure that they wouldn't go up for the hauls.
Okay, cool.
Glenn, I got a question on the central location that we have now. Is there much non-glass material that ends up in there that has to be sorted out? And would the individual containers that Momentum is going to provide be a cleaner way to receive glass with less pollution, so to speak?
Jason might be better to answer that. I have not noticed a significant contamination rate in our glass recycle bin, nor have I in past experiences. Generally, it's cardboard and plastic bags that people bring the glass in. But Jason, do you have any specific data on our dumpster enclosure?
Yeah, over the last year to date, you've collected 50 tons, 49.57 tons to be exact. And there hasn't been any notes about contamination. Our drivers, when they perform the service, will take a picture. If there's any contamination there, maybe there's a discarded mattress or something like that. But since we don't perform the service, ACE has not reported anything either to us. And when our plant staff empties the dumpster, they actually inspect the load when it's tipped. And if they find an old toilet or a TV or something in there, that's noted, but nothing has been noted. And so they have been clean and really glass only. I think the only complaint that we've had is that it's not hauled as frequently. We have had reports that it is very full at times where they can't get the glass in there when they go to deposit it. But to the mayor's point, we do find cardboard and some plastic bags in there. Those are fairly common contaminants because residents will take their glass and those bags or cardboard and then deposit them in the dumpster with their glass. And so that's common. That's nothing too out of the ordinary. And honestly, right now, ACE is providing a great service. The dumpster, in terms of the art that Councilmember Gettle was talking about, is just mainly drawing attention to it and kind of making it more of a public art installation. And so I'm sure that ACE, if that dumpster is situated at the Midvale City Park all the time, they would probably open to turning it into a more attractive, part of the community. And so we could talk to them about that. But the dumpster that we would provide would be no different than a dumpster that ACE already has there that they could provide. And so mainly we could help the city kind of turn that into more of a public art installation to draw attention to it.
Okay.
That sounds perfectly fine to me. One way or another, you showed us kind of the dream dumpsters that, we kind of fell in love with. And, however, whether it's a new one or the one that's there now that gets transitioned to that, I think it'd be amazing. Yeah, and to give you guys a heads up, tomorrow at 2 p.m. we are delivering the second dumpster mural to a new glass drop-off location at Sugar House Park. And so if you want to get an idea of what it might look like in the city, you can go to Liberty Park or Sugar House Park after tomorrow to see what those look like.
Excellent. And do you have those at your facility as well to view?
This one is finally leaving the nest. And so we're going to be preparing the next one after this.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions from the mayor or council?
Sounds like we got them all.
Okay, I do have a suggested motion then.
Okay.
Mayor, if you're ready for it, I move that we adopt resolution number 2021 R10 approving the mayor to enter into an agreement with Momentum Recycling to operate a curbside glass recycling program within Midvale City.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this before we take the vote? Hearing none. Rory, would you ask the questions, please?
Yes. Councilmember Glover,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Very emphatic yes.
and Sperry.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. So Jason, you got a new customer.
Thank you, everybody. We're very excited. Can't wait.
All right, we'll move on now to a discussion item to discuss citywide e-scooter pilot program. Nate, put the power in your steering wheel and let's go through this. What do we got?
Not much, apparently. Here we go.
I started sharing my screen before I started the presentation. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through this as coherently as possible, and then answer any questions that you have. So just a background on this. Anyone that hasn't seen e-scooters happen a lot in cities around. If you've gone and visited, you've seen them going around, and hopefully maybe some of you have tried them. Midvale, about a month ago or so, was approached by Bird, which is one of the electric scooter companies. There's a few of them, about potentially entering into a partnership for a pilot program. The mayor, Matt Kane, and I met with them, and they gave us a short presentation on that. And I've worked with them a little bit and seen what they needed. They initially had given us an MOU, which really didn't get us quite there, and then also provided an agreement, which was kind of a template of what they'd used in some other cities. Our attorney's office did a quick review of that. There were a lot of issues that came out of that we were concerned about. But one of the bigger issues is that with several providers operating in the state of Utah and in cities that neighbor Midvale, we really would need to do an RFP in order to select one if we wanted to do an exclusive contract agreement with them. Staff is not recommending that we show any exclusive contract with any of these, but instead put if council wants to go down this direction and wants to see e-scooters in Midvale, that we put together a e-scooter ordinance. And I'll talk a little bit about both of what those look like. But in the state of Utah right now, the providers are Lime, Bird, Spin. They are operating or will be operating in Draper, Sandy. They have been operating in Salt Lake, Provo, and Ogden. So there is some competition because all of those are in the market. But what happens with that is they are these scooters that get placed around the city. Customers can unlock them with an app and then ride anywhere that the company provides services, which is typically within the city limits, unless there's neighboring cities that have the same service. They go about 20 miles before they die, and can go about 20 miles an hour. They are kind of fun to ride. And then company staff, but really they contract with local people that kind of manage the system for them, collect the scooters, recharge the scooters, and they track those with GPS. The price schedule that most of them follow right now is it's $1 to unlock and then 15 cents. Sorry, 0.15 for every minute that you use. Those are Lyman birds. The way that they, in talking with them, that they like to operate is just like a bike. So they typically like to operate in bike lanes or on the shoulders of roads where bikes would ride, or on paths or trails. They don't like to go on sidewalks unless it's necessary. When we've looked at this at staff, we think that there's areas of the city where you would need to go on the sidewalk to feel safe. And we don't like the liability issues of having people being forced to stay in the street in areas that aren't safe. I'll go through this quickly. Again, we couldn't necessarily just sign an agreement with Bird because we'd have to go through an RFP process. Some of the issues that we see with the Bird contracts that they've given us is they really call out exclusive operating rights, and we think it should be open. Contract would last for 24 months, automatic renewal. They would put about 50 to 100 scooters across the city, and they would set up stations where these would be come from. They would have specific hours. In the second agreement that they gave, they would provide some money back per ride to the city. But the city would be responsible for regulating those. And then they would be responsible for recharging those and making sure that they're parked in the right areas and that they're not causing a nuisance. The reason this is kind of an interesting item, we really wanted to dig into it a little bit more, and we will dig into it a little bit more. But Bird is kind of on a tight timeline. I think they're trying to figure out what cities they need to deploy in all across the country. So they have been on a tight timeline. It's not that if we didn't meet that timeline, they might not still come to Midvale. It's just that would be where they kind of put it in a priority. They only have so many scooters across the country that they could put out. But as I said, staff recommends that we go the route of a scooter ordinance or an RFP, but we really recommend going the route of a scooter ordinance and then allowing any provider to get a business license and operate within that ordinance. So we'll talk about some of the research that we've done. Sandy has just put a scooter ordinance in place. That's the one that we've kind of primarily been looking at. Salt Lake City also did a pilot program with both companies, and then they, from that experience and from the data that they got, have put together a citywide ordinance. Ogden also has it. They don't do a citywide ordinance, but they do work with Lyme. So let me just go through a little bit. So the Sandy ordinance is really pretty comprehensive. Just about all the questions that you kind of have when you read through it, they answer and they cover. We would still like, our legal staff would like to go through that even in more detail to make sure that everything applies and fits with Midvale. And it's about a 9-page ordinance with a lot of definitions and a lot of detail on almost every aspect of it. So this is a very summarized, within that, they cover the required equipment that's, that the scooters would have to meet. And there's a whole bunch of equipment that you would need, depending on if you did it at night. Helmets are recommended, obviously. And as I said before, the Sandy ordinance is similar to what I think we would want to do, where it gives priority of where you would be allowed to operate the scooters. So it would really be in bikeways or multi-use trails. And then when that isn't available, it could be on the shoulder of a road, the way that bikes operate. And then when that isn't safe, that that they could be used on the sidewalks. There's a whole lot of detail in how that operates. If you are on the shoulder or if you're out in a vehicle lane, you can't be in a vehicle lane where the speed limit is more than 35. You have to be at least 16 years of age to ride one of them. You have to obey all the traffic rules, and then there's basically the right of way, or you have to yield the right of way to bikes, to pedestrians, and that's all outlined. A big section of the code is about how these scooters can be parked and where you can leave them. And so they should be put into these docking corrals that they put around the town. And then if those aren't available, it's very specific on where you could leave these so that they're not impeding any traffic on the sidewalk, obviously not out in the road. And the Sandy ordinance really goes through, 2 pages of where you can put these in relations to egress into businesses, in relation to ADA ramps, all sorts of different things. Of course, you're not on private property. And the way that they do it is they set out the ordinance, which covers all these things, and then they have a specific business license that also the criteria for the business license are called out in the ordinance that they have to meet. And that has a lot of detail in it as well, in terms of how they operate, how the license can be revoked, how the scooters have to be maintained and monitored, including giving a full detail of how the GPS system works and how the company would be monitoring those. And then how they're educating their riders on complying with all the laws of the ordinance, and then also the safety laws of the state. And so enforcement also within that ordinance, they have a lot of criteria on how they maintain their license to operate. And also, if scooters are found in areas where they shouldn't be, the company has a certain amount of time to retrieve those. And if not, the city can sort of impound them and charge them for the cost of doing that. So there's a lot of protection built within the Sandy ordinance, and Midvale would be looking to build all those protections and make sure any other things that we want to see related to the use of these fit within that ordinance. So what staff is recommending is that Midvale City, first of all, I should say, if council wants to see scooters in Midvale, the staff would recommend that the city staff develop and adopt an e-scooter ordinance similar to Sandy, and that staff recommends the providers. Any provider can operate in Midvale with a business license so long as they're in accordance with that ordinance. Another thing to note is that the city code currently states that it's unlawful for any person to drive or park a self-propelled vehicle on any sidewalk except to cross on crossings of the sidewalk. So no matter what council would like to do, we would need to make adjustments to city code. If staff really does want to go down a single provider route, then we would have to do an RFP. But again, staff is recommending this e-scooter ordinance. That is presentation. Obviously, it was kind of quick, and there's a whole lot of details there. And the picture of that kid there is not 16 years old, and he's not riding an e-scooter, so don't worry about that. But any questions that council has on the direction that staff wants to go, or also I think the first question is council wanting to pursue allowing e-scooters in the city.
Okay, well,
Nate, I think we have certain
discussion.
areas.
What do you want to do?
Sorry. We have certain area. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to be all over. It's not like we don't have the urban landscape as Salt Lake City did when, you know, this first started happening and everyone was wondering where all these scooters were coming from. I think generally they're going to be in the Fort Union area and the Bingham Junction area, and that's, you know, where the bulk of them are going to be. So, you know, they're going to be here regardless, I think. And I've already had people reach out wondering, you know, why we didn't have a program like this in place. So I think to be proactive, it's great. I don't think it's a bad idea to enter into an agreement with one company, because then you do avoid what happened in Salt Lake City. And that is, you know, they had 4 or 5 different companies putting scooters all over the city with relative impunity, because, you know, it was such a new thing at the time, you know, that no one had an e-scooter ordinance because they didn't exist until they existed. So, you know, is there any other city that does have an exclusivity contract like this with a company
In Utah?
that you know of?
Yeah, I don't,
yeah, not nationwide.
the one that I would want to look at is maybe Ogden to see if they're exclusive or not. I didn't read that in depth to know if they're exclusive, but that might be the one that is. You know, in Sandy, they have an agreement in place and they have a promotional sort of agreement with Lime to operate there, but they don't exclude anybody else from operating. So Bird is going to get a business license there to operate, but the city of Sandy kind of is actively advertising and promoting with Lime, because they do have a specific agreement and a pay, you know, they're getting paid per ride from Lime. So
and to be honest, that's kind of what I would love to see us have, that kind of an agreement. I wouldn't necessarily want to, you know, preclude another company from doing it, but if we're going to have them here and we can share in the profit of each ride, you know, why not do that? Other than Lisa probably has something to say about why we might not want to do that.
But we're looking into that. We're looking into how the
Okay.
state is handling the fees that Sandy, for example, is doing. From the feedback we're getting from the cities, that there are a couple that have had contracts. Not sure if they're exclusive, but all of them said that they would prefer to do the ordinance is the way to go first. I mean, in instead of the contract, that way you have something other than just a contractual obligation. If they're not, you know, that we can regulate them by an ordinance rather than enforce the contract.
Okay. That makes sense then. Yeah, I just don't want to close the door entirely to having some sort of an agreement where we prefer one company over another, and in so doing get, you know, some sort of profit share out of it.
Well, and the fees we want to, you know, that would be in our ordinance, how we handle the fees of anyone that is having scooters in would be handled in our ordinance.
And I was wondering too, I don't know if Laura's on the call or a meeting, but I think it would be easier from just a promotional standpoint as well to just have that branding aspect of it, and, you know, say Midvale's cooperating with Bird for all of your e-scooter needs. You know, something better than that. I'm not the communications kind of person, but, you know, I figured if you have one company, it would be easier than, you know, having every company under the sun in the city from a branding standpoint.
Okay.
The only problem with going with one company is you might get a great company. It might do a really good job. You might get a crappy company and not do a good job. If you have more than one, at least though, the one that gives you the best service is going to win out.
It also gives incentive to, if we don't have, I don't think that we should have, bird scooters only. And if you're a Lime scooter, we're gonna, kick you out of the city. I don't think we should go that route. But if you do have a preferred contract, I would think for the competition, it would give them more incentive to do better and be better, to try to cut into their competitors' market share. So there is, even if you have a contract with one, that doesn't mean the other company is going to do a worse
as
job.
long as you don't just give it to one company and they have no
Yeah.
competition.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, and that sounds what at least two of the council members have said is the direction that we were recommending going.
I'm good with that. Let's get the ordinance written and flesh some of those things out.
Great. Any other comments? No. Okay, we'll get to work on that, and we'll hopefully have that back to council soon. Thanks.
Okay, good discussion. Thanks, everybody. That concludes our agenda for city council, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We'll wait just a couple of minutes. We've got an RDA meeting coming up.
We're okay to go ahead, Mayor.
Hey, you're on the ball. Good.
Yeah, we don't need to change it for this. We're good.
Okay, then I want to welcome everybody to the Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City on this March 16th, 2021. Again, this is an electronic city council meeting. The meeting is electronic without a physical location. I'm Mayor Robert Hale, as chair of the Midvale City Council, made the determination that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based upon the fact that the city is unable to ensure compliance with the guidelines and public health protocols mandated by the state's current risk phase. As restrictions take place across the state for limiting public gatherings, the city wants to make sure everyone interested in participating in city council meetings can do so. The meeting will be broadcast on our YouTube link. Public comments are read into the record by city staff during the public comments and public hearing portion of the meeting. If you'd like to make a public comment, please send your comment by email to Laura Magnus at LMAGNESS@midvale.com. If you'd like to provide public comments, please email those comments prior to the completion of public comment portions of the meeting. You may also submit comments if the mayor and city council open a specific agenda to further public comment. These comments will be read aloud in the meeting and will be part of the public record. So we're ready for a roll call on this RDA meeting. So
Okay.
you call the roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Sperry.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
And Glover.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Public comment section is now. So if anyone has a comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for public hearing on the agenda, you may submit your comment via email as I outlined just a couple of seconds ago, prior to the completion of this portion of the meeting. Items brought forward to the attention of the board will be turned over to staff to provide a response outside of the meeting. Laura, have you received any public comments to this point?
No, Mayor, we do not have any public comments at this time.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
We next will take care of our consent agenda to approve the minutes of our February 16th, 2021 meeting.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on the motion? Rory, would you call the question?
Yes, Board Member Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
Glover,
Aye.
Sperry,
Aye.
and Robinson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our action item. The first of two is to discuss and consider adopting resolution number 2021-04 RDA, a resolution adopting the interlocal cooperation agreement between South Salt Lake Valley Mosquito Abatement District and the agency concerning the Main Street Community Development Area. Cody Hill, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it. So this resolution, as Mayor Hale said, is to enter into the interlocal cooperation agreement between the redevelopment agency and the South Salt Lake Valley Mosquito Abatement District, whereby they would provide 60% of their property tax increment for 20 years. So it is basically the same agreement that the other taxing entities have entered into to date. We have the city, we have the school district, we have Unified Fire Service area, and then this will be the fourth taxing entity to enter into the agreement. Our projections look like the entity would provide $15,000 over 20 years under the primary budget and $34,000 over 20 years for the contingency budget. Thanks to Paul Glover. He's a member of that board, and he spoke in favor of this. And also, Kate Andrus did a wonderful job. She is the Community Development Executive Assistant, and she gave the presentation for the interlocal cooperation agreements. And so, as I said before, the terms are going to be the same as the other interlocal agreements with the other entities that we have. Are there any questions?
Just so you know, the staff did a really good job with that presentation.
Glad to hear that. Okay, if there's no questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion. I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-0 RDA, which enters the agency into an interlocal cooperation agreement between Salt Lake County Valley Mosquito Abatement District for the participation of property tax increment to support the Main Street Community Development Area.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we call for the vote? Hearing none. Rory, would you ask the questions, please?
Yes, Board Member Gettle,
Yes.
Glover,
Aye.
Sperry,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
and Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. Our second discussion action item tonight is to discuss and consider resolution 2021-05 RDA, adopting the Central Community Park Project Agreement between Blue Line Designs and the agency. Nate?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As the board may know, the Jordan Bluffs Development Agreement includes, over the life of that development, a 15-acre community park with a amenity value of up to $6 million provided by the developer. We're beginning to, with the Zions project, see the first phase of that park come into play with that large area plan that Science has put together. And so in going through that design process, there's several different concerns that staff has. One of those being that that park will be designed in phases, and where the developer has hired a design firm to do that park, we do want to understand how those different phases interact with each other, that we're getting the correct amenities all throughout that park, and that we're not, stacking a lot of stuff up near phase one near the Zions building, but that we're getting a nice mix of amenities through there. Also, Public Works has been involved, and the Parks Department, in understanding how the costs will be in operating that park once it's dedicated to the city, as far as ongoing maintenance and just operations, making sure that we have amenities that aren't cost prohibitive to the city to operate. And so it was staff's recommendation that we hire an outside consultant to work with the developer and with that current landscape architect, so that we can assess the whole park, get independent cost estimates, and make sure that we're not only providing amenities that work for the development, but also that work for the community, because this is a community park, not just for that Jordan Bluffs, but for the entire city. So we did an RFP, had several design firms apply, and after evaluating those, the staff is recommending going with Blue Line Design. They have done similar design projects, and we think that they will be a good contractor or a good design partner to work with Gardner Development and with the city, and getting a good park. So this was staff recommended. Gardner agrees with it, and has agreed to partner together to design the best park that we can for Midvale. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. So the contract does go for 3 years, so we can evaluate those different phases as they come on. And it is for $21,200 for that primary scope.
Nate, this is Councilmember Brown. So the 21,200, that would be just the phase one, or like sort of an overall, or what did you mean by that?
That's a,
.com 360.
well, I don't know where that came from. That's for the overall phase of evaluating all the phases of the park that are designed right now, but also with the ability to come in as more development comes in and evaluate it if there are changes. But that is for the entire scope right now.
And so they'll keep it inside that cost, or do you foresee them running that up? Because there's obviously the hourly thing at the end, right?
Yes. So if we request additional services from them, they do have a cost schedule that they would follow.
I'm just nervous about cost generally. I said this when we voted on this. It feels like a decade ago, because I already think by the time phase 3 is built, if it's not done soon, that $6 million, we're like going to be paying for sod and irrigation, right? And like nothing. They sold us with all these super cool images of like splash pads and community parks and whatever, and I tried to get them to commit to items and not dollar amounts, and that didn't happen. So I just want to try to control the cost up front as much as possible. That way, by the time we get to actually putting in this park, that is just going to be, to avoid it from just being a grass park, right? Because we've spent too much money or waited too long. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, and we completely agree with that. That's an issue that we're worried about as well.
Well, that's one of the things that they need to do in this design is design the whole park so that, and put the cost estimates to it so that we know what we're going to get in the end. If we don't have a master plan to start with, we're going to not know what we're going to end up in the end, just like Councilman Brown said. So we need to have they need to give us a plan so that we can work towards it and make sure that we get what we want.
Yeah, and that's the intention, exactly.
Because if we just leave it to the developer, I think Councilman Brown is exactly right.
Other questions, comments? All right, then I guess we're ready for a motion. Or not?
I think we're trying to find him here.
Okay.
Where is it?
Mayor, I move that we approve contract resolution 2021-05 RDA, entering into an agreement with Blue Line Design for the Jordan Bluffs Central Community Park project.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions about the motion? Hearing none. Rory, would you ask the question on this final item of the evening?
Sure. Board Member Glover,
Aye.
Sperry,
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Brown
Yeah.
and Gettle.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thanks to all. I'll entertain one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Paul.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good night,
night.